Chapter 1089. Jun pays his respects to Your Highness Nuwa. May Your Highness live to the fullest. Jun and Luya bowed to Nuwa together. Dragons could be big or small, they could rise or hide. When they were big, they could breathe out mist. When they were small, they could hide themselves. When they rose, they could soar in the universe. When they hid, they could hide in the waves. Although he was the most respected person in the demon race, when facing a saint like Nuwa, especially when he needed her help, he could still swallow his pride and bow respectfully. Forget it. Your Majesty is the emperor of the demon race. There's no need to be so courteous. Hearing Goddess Nviwa's words, Jun stopped halfway through a salute. Seeing this, Jun did not insist. He straightened up and said with a sorrowful expression, Jun is useless. Emperor Jun is so useless that he couldn't even protect his own son. Today, I specially came to see Your Highness to leave Luya with you. If he is lucky enough to survive the sorcerer and demon war, I will come back to take him back. I hope Your Highness can take care of him for the sake of Emperor Jun. Hearing Jun speak so pitifully, Nuwa did not feel good. Just like how Jin Ning had never seen the courteous Jun before. When had Nuwa seen such a fragile and unconfident Jun? Little Ten is also my junior. It just so happens that I'm lonely. It's good for him to accompany me in Emperor Nviwa's palace. Don't worry, I'll take care of him as my disciple. As long as he's with me, he won't face any calamity. If he wants to leave in the future, I won't stop him. And with the name of Emperor Nviwa's palace, even if he returns to desolation, no matter who it is, they'll give him some face. Nuwa first agreed to Jun's request, then comforted him. Your Majesty, why are you so pessimistic? Although the Wu people are powerful, the demon race is not easy to deal with either. Moreover, the demon race has the upper hand now. It's a pity that after this, with Hui breaking through to Zhu Wu, that bit of advantage won't exist, but will be greatly reduced. Jun shook his head and said bitterly. Besides, the enemies of the demon clan are not just the Wu people. At this point, a scarlet light flashed in Jun's eyes, filled with killing intent. Why did the 10 golden crows leave Penglai Island? Why did Fusang not appear? Why did he not calculate anything before this? If these incidents were said to be coincidences, Jun would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. Clearly, someone was behind this. The person who could do all this and hide it from Jun was obviously not easy to deal with. There are only a few people in the world. Sanxing, Jane, Zhuni, Bloodsea, EC, Hongjun Tiandao, and Tianweishan. In terms of hatred, Jun naturally wanted to eat their flesh and sleep on their skin. Compared to Ho-E, his hatred for these people was so strong that it could not be washed away even with all the water in 5 lakes and 3 rivers. However, what could he do? Even if Nuwa was involved, they would not be able to get justice, let alone him. Unless they obtained the final victory in the Great Magi Demon War and broke through to primordial chaos with the blessing of Providence, there would be no hope of revenge at all. After hearing Jun's words, Nuwa could not help but fall silent. Even she did not know that such a major incident had happened in the demon race. Although they were already in the midst of the cultivation tribulation, it was obviously very abnormal. Clearly, someone was stirring up trouble and hiding the heavenly secrets. After the death of the 10 golden crows, the heavenly secrets became clear. Nuwa immediately calculated the heavenly secrets and instantly understood the cause and effect. Although she was filled with hatred, what could she do? Although she was a sage and the first person to become a sage after Hongjun, she did not have a supreme treasure and had become a sage through merit. Among the sages, she was only slightly better than Zhuani. Moreover, apart from her, all the sages had taken action this time. Even Zhuani had personally suppressed the Fusang tree and schemed against the 10 golden crows. What could she do? Look for Zhunti, Sanxing, and Ro to settle the score? Even if she wanted to, she would not be able to do so. After all, she had the intention to kill the enemy, but was powerless to do so. Jun was well aware of all this, so he did not make things difficult for Nuwa. He did not ask why Nuwa did not make a move, nor did he ask who the mastermind was. He did not. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. At this moment, the atmosphere was somewhat heavy and awkward. Fortunately, Jun was the emperor. One could imagine how tough his heart was. After a moment of silence, he composed himself and revealed the second reason for his visit to the palace. That was to slaughter people. Your Highness, this time, besides entrusting immortal Luya to you, Jun has come to ask for your approval for another matter. Oh, what is it? Nuwa asked. It's like this. As he spoke, Jun told her about how some small demons had discovered that weapons refined with human blood and souls could easily break through the defenses of the Wu people. What do you mean? Nuwa frowned. Although she did not pay much attention to the human race, it was she who had created it and become a sage because of it. She had feelings for it, and the human race also had her own destiny. If Jun massacred them, she would not be able to get over it. At the same time, it would damage her own destiny, which would be detrimental to her cultivation. Your Highness, although the human race is the key to you becoming a sage, it was Hongjun Tiandao who made use of you to bring human Dao into the world. You are still the sage of the demon race, and the only sage. Apart from you, there are 6 other sages in the human race. Seeing Nuwa's hesitation, Jun continued unhurriedly. Moreover, although I am refining weapons to slaughter the human race, it is not to exterminate the entire race. I am only refining a treasure that can surprise the Wu people and increase our chances of victory in the great shaman-demon war. Understand with emotion and move with reason. Hearing Jun's words, Nuwa's heart could not help but waver. Sages, although they were sages, they were still human. Every human had 7 emotions and 6 desires, and they had preferences. Naturally, Nuwa was the same. Although the human race and the demon race were both related to her, the flesh on the palm and the back of the hand were both flesh, but the flesh on the palm was obviously thicker than the flesh on the back of the hand. Compared to the human race that Hongjun Tiandao had created through her hands, she was born in the demon race and was naturally more inclined towards the demon race. Moreover, as Jun had said, she was the only sage of the demon race. Although there was still the emperor, compared to the human race, besides her, there were also Sanxing, Junti, and many other sages. It was clearly much better. Moreover, Nuwa had predicted that the human race would face this calamity. As the sage of Hongjun Tiandao, she naturally had to comply with the heavens and the people. As for whether the human race would be exterminated because of this, Nuwa was not worried at all. After all, the human race was related to the 7 sages. Whether it was for the demon race or for Jun himself, he had to be cautious. Otherwise, if he was not careful, it would be a terrible disaster. Forget it. After a long while, Nuwa let out a sigh. She neither agreed nor disagreed. She only said, I am not the only one in charge of the human race. You still have to seek Heavenly Lord Wanda's opinion on this matter. Yes, thank you, Your Highness. Hearing this, Jun was delighted. Although Nuwa did not say anything directly, it was obvious that she had tacitly agreed. Chapter 1090. Jun went to the imperial palace of Wu to ask for the approval of a butcher. On the Wu people's side, Huta Dijong also brought Ho-Yi back to the Pangu Hall. Zhurong, Gong, and the others knew that Ho-Yi had benefited from his misfortune and broken through to the Sage-to-Be realm. They were naturally overjoyed. After the joy of Hutu becoming a saint, the incomplete Dutian divine fiend array was on their minds. Originally, they were still thinking of choosing one of the 3 heroes of the Wu people, Qiyu, Ho-Yi, and Xing Tian, to cultivate and fill the array position behind Hutu. They did not expect Ho-Yi to break through on his own. It was really a pleasant surprise. Although Kwa Fu had died, Zhurong and the others still wanted to thank Jun for his help. Compared to the original trajectory, the current situation of the Wu people was much better. Not only did Huda not die, but she had also become a Dao saint. Her cultivation level had reached the mid-stage primordial chaos. With the help of the Dao, She was even comparable to the late-stage primordial chaos. So much so that Hongjun had to ground her and Yuhua at the same time and forbid them from interfering in the great sorcerer and demon war. Although they were indignant, they could only accept it helplessly. They did not expect that there would always be a way out. Hou-Yi actually broke through at this time. In the original trajectory, although Hou-Yi was the same as Hou-Tu, he did not die because of the merit, and also generated a primordial spirit, but he was bound to the moon star, turned into Wu Gang, and cut the laurel endlessly. But now, he had broken through the boundary between the great sorcerer and the Zhu Wu. He became the 13th Zhu Wu of the Wu people. Not only did he reduce the losses of the Wu people, but he also made up for the incomplete Du Tian Divine Fiend array due to Huda's absence. Of course, the current Hou-Yi had just broken through to the Zhu Wu realm. Not only could his cultivation level not keep up with the other Zhu Wu, but he was also clearly lacking in terms of telepathy and cooperation. However, these could all be trained. Therefore, when Dijun brought Luya to the Wu Palace, the 12 Zhu Wu brought Hou-Yi back to the Wu people's Pangu Hall. While practicing the heavenly divine killing formation and familiarizing himself with its routines, he used all the resources of the Wu people, such as the flesh and blood of the Chaos Fiend God, which Hou-Tu personally imparted to him, and even used the power of Pangu's heart to quickly increase Hou-Yi's strength. Although this would cause Hou-Yi's foundation to be unstable, there was nothing he could do about it. After all, the most important thing right now was to survive the great sorcerer and demon tribulation. Moreover, compared to the previous candidate, Chi-Yu, Hou-Yi was much better. After all, he had already surpassed Zhu Wu. In the original trajectory, after Hou-Yi's death, the Zhu Wu settled for the next best candidate, Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu was a great sorcerer of the metal lineage. According to the principle of earth begets metal, he was passable. However, because his cultivation level had not surpassed Zhu Wu realm, although the foundation of the Wu people had given birth to him, he was still a shortcoming. During the Great Sorcerer and Demon War, the demon race had broken through him and used the Wu-slaying sword to kill Chi-Yu. This caused the formation to be broken and both sides to suffer. This was also why Chi-Yu was so severely restrained by Xuan Yuan's Ren Huang sword during the Battle of Jilu, because the Ren Huang sword was the Wu-slaying sword. After the Great Sorcerer and Demon War, the Bell of Chaos disappeared. The Kunpeng swept away the ancient book and river diagram. The Zhodian Star Banner was mostly destroyed. The Demon Summoning Banner fell into Nua's hands, and the Wu-slaying sword fell into Laozi's hands. It was refined in the 8 trigrams alchemy cauldron and changed into the Emperor Xianyuan's sword. In addition to the fact that the Wu-slaying sword could restrain the Wu people, it was also because he had once fallen in the hands of this sword. Putting aside the matter of the sorcerer and demon races, it was Fang Qingshan's side. Back then, before Hou-Tu visited the Blood Sea, Fang Qingshan released his 2 doppelgangers and asked Mosquito Daoran to wait for him at Mount Buzhou. He followed Sanqing to get the lotus seeds of the Green Lotus of Fate and went to the East Sea. Coincidentally, the demon race attacked Penglai Island. The origin of the 3 fairies island resonated, and they found Ingzhou and Abbot obtaining the pure white lotus. It could be said that it was a success. What about the doppelganger of the Tree of World? It was not without gains. That was because he really did not know where the World Tree of Desolation was. He only knew that during the period of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, there was a tree that could reach the sky. At this moment, there was still an unknown amount of time before the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Fang Qingshan was not willing to wait any longer. Without a specific location and unwilling to wait, he could only use his doppelganger to communicate with the origin of the world tree and wander around to try his luck to see if he could cause a resonance. However, this method was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack. Fortunately, he was not in a hurry. Looking at his original body and seeing that Mosquito Daoran had all reached primordial chaos and taken a big step on the primordial chaos road, he had long past the time to be anxious. Besides, haste makes waste, and being anxious was completely useless. Therefore, the World Tree Doppelganger relaxed and treated it as a trial. He wandered around every corner of the desolation, including famous mountains and rivers, grotto heavens and blessed lands, and collected some spirit roots and spirit plants that he had never seen before. If he could coincidentally obtain a connate numinous treasure or a rare treasure, it would be a pleasant surprise. It was unknown if the world tree had sensed the danger of death, or if it had sensed the aura of the same kind, or if Feng Qingshan's luck had come. On this day, when a world tree doppelganger walked to a small valley, his heart suddenly palpitated. He hurriedly released a wisp of spiritual force to track it down, but he did not expect to lose it after entering the valley. Regarding this, the world tree doppelganger was naturally not shocked, but happy. He had encountered this kind of situation many times. It was obvious that he had encountered another fated treasure. Moreover, in terms of feeling, the world tree doppelganger realized that this treasure was no small matter. After all, it was a treasure that could make his heart palpitate. Hence, he took a step forward and instantly appeared at the place where the wisp of spiritual force had disappeared. He looked around and saw that this place was not some grotto heavens or blessed land. There were not many famous mountains and rivers, and there was not even a lot of spiritual energy. In the desolation, it was a deserted place. There were only a few spirit plants that looked like cabbages growing on the streets. If not for the fact that the world tree doppelganger had really felt his heart palpitate here, and the closer he got, the stronger the feeling became, he probably would not have noticed the abnormality here. As the saying goes, there must be a reason for everything abnormal. Such an ordinary valley actually made me lose my sense of spiritual force, and even made me have a sudden impulse. Obviously, it's not as ordinary as it seems on the surface. There must be something very important to me inside. It might be the world tree. His words had come true. That's right, hidden in this valley was the world tree, which was not one of the top 10 connate spirit roots in the desolation, but was even better. Just like how Sanqing had discovered the green lotus of creation in Mount Buzhou, the world tree had discovered the world tree doppelganger, which had the same root and origin. It immediately emitted an aura and lured it over. If it was not for fate, or if it was someone as powerful as Tong Tian, Dijun, who had powerful array formations and could calculate the heavenly secrets, would have subconsciously ignored this place and would not have discovered the strangeness of this place. Of course, the world tree doppelganger was an exception. After all, it was of the same origin as the world tree, and it was the world tree that had led it here. Chapter 1091. You can wear out iron shoes and fruitless searching, but by chance you get it without even looking. He did not sense any danger, and his spiritual perception did not warn him. The world tree clone walked into the valley at a moderate pace and disappeared in an instant. The valley was still the same valley, but what the world tree clone saw was a different world. When he opened his eyes, the feeling of reuniting with his long-lost family filled his heart. The branches and leaves swayed, as if they were welcoming the arrival of the world tree clone. Looking up, a tree that was not smaller than the main body of the world tree clone stood tall. Its head touched the clouds and pierced the Kunlun Mountains. Its branches and leaves covered the sky. If the world tree clone revealed its main body, it would be like a twin brother to this tree. Upon seeing this item, the world tree clone immediately thought of the records in the classic of mountains and seas, Southern Sea Classic. There's a wood that looks like an ox, and its skin is like a tassel, like a yellow snake. Its leaves are like silk, but it is actually like lawn. Its wood is like a tree, and its name is Jianmu. Although the world tree clone had already guessed it, he could not help but feel overjoyed when he saw this item. His main body, Mosquito Dowrin, had already broken through to primordial chaos and was going further and further on the primordial chaos path. Although he was not in a hurry, because he was not in a hurry, he also knew that if he did not break through, he would really fall behind and be eliminated. The world tree clone heaved a long sigh of relief. With this item and a wish of coming to the desolation realm, his chances of breaking through to primordial chaos would increase by 30%. He would have a chance to continue keeping up with his main body's pace. he still did not know that Fang Qingshan had already extracted thousands of nomological seeds from the secret vault of the Wu people. As long as he integrated those origin power and the Jianmu in front of him, breaking through to primordial chaos was almost a certainty. Come. In order to avoid any accidents, the World Tree clone immediately waved his hand. The creation would rose from the ground. In an instant, it turned into an exquisite creation wood that landed in the hands of the World Tree clone. This was also because the World Tree did not have spiritual intelligence, and the clone of the World Tree was of the same origin as it. Otherwise, how could the World Tree, which was comparable to the peak of the Sage to be subdued so easily? Actually, it was also good to fall into the hands of the World Tree clone. Although he could not escape the fate of being refined by him in the end, at least he could still be continued as a World Tree. If it fell into the hands of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors in the future and was used as a bridge to communicate with heaven, earth, man, and God, the final outcome would probably be the same as the World Tree's original fate. When Fang Qingshan was in the 3 Kingdoms world, wasn't Zhang Jiao's 9-section staff formed from a fragment of the World Tree? Mosquito Dauren obtained the lotus seeds of the green lotus of fate, the world-cleansing white lotus, the generation unity tea, a pool of triple light sacred water, the gold and silver platform, and the book of righteousness. The World Tree clone also collected countless spiritual roots and spiritual plants and obtained the Jianmu. Fang Qingshan's Wu people and the Pangu Palace had also gained a lot from the trip. They had obtained the flesh and blood of the reincarnation demon god, nomological laws, and spiritual treasures. They had also extracted countless nomological origin energy for the World Tree clone, obtained the immortal stone, obtained the lifeless demon god's essence blood, and obtained the wishing pond. It could be said that they had achieved great success. Next, what they had to do was to quickly turn all these things into strength. A bird in the hand was worth 1,000 birds in the bush. Although spiritual treasures and spiritual roots were good, they could not be turned into strength. They were just wealth, resources, or external objects. Only by using these things to improve one's cultivation as much as possible was the hard truth. With strength, one could earn more rare treasures. Without strength, no matter how many rare treasures one obtained, it could still lead to a fatal disaster. Therefore, the 3 of them returned to the Blood Sea and began to cultivate in seclusion. What the World Tree clone had to do was naturally to integrate the countless nomological origin energy seeds obtained from Fang Qingshan into its body, perfect the world Tao, and improve its control of this Tao as much as possible. Then, it would refine the Jianmu, replenish its origin energy, and finally break through to the primordial chaos realm. What Mosquito Dauren had to do was naturally refine the lifeless demon god's essence blood, comprehend the lifeless sword principle, improve the massacre law, and then use the essence blood to temper the great Tao of blood in his body. As for Fang Qingshan, there were even more things to do. He first threw the wishing pond, the demon god's treasure, and the book of righteousness, the Confucian faction's treasure, into the timeless ark, occupying 2 eternal divine furnace units. This further strengthened the foundation of the timeless ark and laid a solid foundation for breaking through to the supremacy realm. Then, he naturally used the pool of triple light sacred water as the foundation to create an eternal sail unit. Then, he threw the lotus seed of the green lotus of creation into it and used the supreme power of creation nurtured by the triple light sacred water to water it. It turned into a 12th grade green lotus of creation. Although it could not compare to the first generation that had become red flowers, white lotus roots, and green lotus leaves, it was still better than the pure white lotus. Then, he used the same trick again and used the heaven and earth cauldron to return both the green lotus of creation and the pure white lotus to their origins. Finally, he let the 15th grade red lotus of hellfire devour them. In order to improve the red lotus of hellfire as much as possible, Feng Qingshan used the 12th grade green lotus of creation and the 12th grade pure white lotus this time. Although the 12th grade green lotus of creation and the 12th grade pure white lotus of creation were not Khanate cardinal treasures, they would be treasured even more in the hands of a sage. Niwa only had a stately painting, and Zhuanti had a golden lotus of merit. However, Feng Qingshan had directly destroyed these two spiritual treasures. If others were to find out about this, they would probably want to kill him. Unfortunately, even so, he did not know whether it was more difficult to break through to become a chaotic spiritual treasure than to become a Khanate cardinal treasure, or because the desolation process did not allow chaotic spiritual treasures to appear, or because the golden lotus of merit and the black lotus of destruction that he had devoured previously had not reached the 12th grade. Therefore, although he had devoured two 12th grade lotus platforms, the red lotus of hellfire did not break through to become a chaotic spiritual treasure. What a pity! Feng Qingshan could not help but sigh. Although he knew that it would be difficult, and he was already mentally prepared, he could not help but feel disappointed when he really failed. After all, Yang Mei had the willow staff, and Hongjun had the purple cloud palace. How could he not have a chaotic spiritual treasure? He did not consider that one of them was a top-level space archdevil, and the other was Hongjun Tiandao's incarnation. Even so, it was not easy for them to obtain the chaotic spiritual treasures in their hands. Although he did not have a chaotic spiritual treasure, the timeless arc was not any weaker than a chaotic spiritual treasure. In terms of value and usage, it was even better. Moreover, although the red lotus of hellfire did not break through to become a chaotic spiritual treasure, it had reached the 24th grade, the limit of a Khanate cardinal treasure. It was not any weaker than the three heaven-splitting treasures evolved from Khanate cardinal treasures. Chapter 1092. Compared to the first time he had devoured the golden lotus of virtue and black lotus of destruction, he had advanced from grade 12 to grade 15. This time, after devouring the green lotus of creation and white lotus of purification, he had advanced from grade 15 to grade 24. A large part of the reason was that he had expended a large amount of energy to break through the bottleneck of a primordial spiritual treasure. This was also why the grade 24 red lotus of hellfire hadn't become a chaos spiritual treasure. It was already so difficult to break through to a primordial cardinal treasure, let alone a chaos spiritual treasure. Furthermore, the golden lotus of virtue he had devoured back then was only grade 11, and the black lotus of destruction was only grade 10. The golden lotus of virtue was still present. If he wanted to cultivate it to grade 12, the amount of merit points consumed would be too great. The gains wouldn't make up for the losses. As for the black lotus of destruction, cultivating it to grade 12 required a source of great destruction. However, this wasn't what the Blood Sea had. As for the green lotus of creation and white lotus of purification, Feng Qingshan had both grade 12 lotus platforms. The green lotus of creation's origin was especially strong. Although it wasn't the grade 12 green lotus of creation of the first generation, it was still superior to the white lotus of purification. Finally, and most importantly, the white lotus of purification, green lotus of creation, golden lotus of virtue, black lotus of destruction, and red lotus of hellfire had all combined into one. It wasn't surprising that he had broken through to grade 24. If the golden lotus of virtue and black lotus of destruction that Feng Qingshan had merged were grade 12, he might have broken through to grade 27. Although it was disappointing that he hadn't broken through to become a chaos spiritual treasure, Feng Qingshan's gains weren't small at all. Whether it was the green lotus of creation's germination into a grade 12 lotus or the red lotus of hellfire's transformation from grade 15 to grade 24. This kind of growth was too important for Feng Qingshan to perfect the Great Tao Green Lotus visualization diagram. Most of the grade 28 Great Tao Green Lotus was illusory. However, as Feng Qingshan's cultivation broke through, he saw many visualization methods, especially the transformation of his lotus platform. Although the Great Tao Green Lotus visualization diagram wasn't completely solidified, it was more than half solidified. The grade 15 Lotus platform was already solidified. The perfection of the cultivation method also meant that Feng Qingshan's cultivation speed would be even faster. The reason why Feng Qingshan refined the Lotus platform first was for the sake of perfecting the Great Tao Azure Lotus diagram. After making all the preparations, Feng Qingshan began to multitask and break through his cultivation. While holding the immortal stone in his hand, he visualized the Great Tao Green Lotus diagram and condensed the immortal substance. At the same time, he absorbed the power within the immortal origin unbreakable crystal to break through his physical body. To do a good job, one must first sharpen his tools. He was indeed sincere. After perfecting the great way of the Green Lotus visualization diagram, the speed at which Feng Qingshan condensed the immortal substance was almost twice as fast as before. Coupled with the support of the immortal stone, Feng Qingshan finally felt like he was cultivating at normal speed. He no longer felt like an old cow pulling a broken cart. As for his body-tempering cultivation, because of the primordial chaos unbreakable crystal, he could feel his progress at every moment. Before the energy of the primordial chaos unbreakable crystal was exhausted, this progress would not change. Besides Feng Qingshan's main body, Mosquito Dauren and the World Tree clone were also improving rapidly. After Mosquito Dauren had refined the lifeless demon god's essence blood, not only had his massacre law improved further, but his blood law had also become slightly refined. Of course, the biggest improvement was in his physical body. After refining a drop of chaotic demon god's essence blood, Mosquito Dauren's physical body had directly broken through to the third stage primordial chaos realm. As for the World Tree clone, it had wandered the desolation path and collected many spirit roots and spirit plants. However, the quality of these spirit plants could not be compared to the nomological origin power that Feng Qingshan had refined in the Wu people's secret vault. After the World Tree clone refined all of them, not only did it perfect the great Tao of the world, it had also added 3 levels to the foundation that it had originally controlled. It had also pushed its cultivation level to the half-step primordial chaos, where water would overflow when it was full. Next, the World Tree clone needed to fuse with the Creation Tree origin to completely replenish its origin power and break through to the primordial chaos realm. The reason it was said to replenish the origin was that the World Tree clone had been nurtured by Feng Qingshan using a fragment of the World Tree. After that, it had mostly fused with the fragments of the World Tree, not the seeds. Therefore, the origin was not perfect. Usually, nothing could be seen, but once it broke through to the primordial chaos realm, it would be a huge curse. Fortunately, with the Creation Tree, its origin was absolutely perfect. With the fusion of the two, a breakthrough was imminent. Just as Feng Qingshan was ignoring the world and breaking through in seclusion, Dijun left the imperial palace of Wu and came to Kunlun Mountain. Laozi naturally knew why he was there. He also knew that if the human race wanted to become the protagonist of the desolation, they had to suffer, work their muscles and bones, starve their bodies, empty their bodies, and mess up their actions. Therefore, he had to be patient and do what he could not. In short, there had to be a test. The demon's massacre was one of them, and it was also the biggest test. After passing it, the liches and demons would retreat in defeat and successfully ascend to the top. However, that was impossible. The saints would not allow that to happen, even if it was for themselves. However, just like Niuhua, Laozi was not willing to give others a handle. He did not directly say whether he agreed or not. He did not even meet Dijun. He only asked the great Taoist Master Xian to send him a message. The human race should not be destroyed, and send him away. Good. Seeing that he had been rejected, Dijun's expression was extremely gloomy. It was obvious that they did not take him, the Demon Emperor, seriously at all, and did not take the demon race seriously. That was indeed the case. In Laozi's eyes, the demons were just grasshoppers at the end of autumn. After the great Magi-Demon War, they would become a thing of the past. Moreover, He was a saint, while Dijun was just a quasi-saint. Their statuses could not be mentioned in the same breath. In that case, there was no need for him to give Dijun face. The river flows east for 30 years, and the river flows west for 30 years. Let's wait and see. Dijun secretly made up his mind to teach Laozi a lesson. After returning to the heavenly courts, with the tacit approval of Niuhua and Laozi, Dijun directly ordered the 10 demon marshals to move out. They led the children under them out of the heavenly courts to kill the humans and collect their blood and souls. On the other hand, he led Tai, Fushi, Kuan Peng, and the others to activate the Zhoutian star array. He locked his power in the sky above the 100,000 mountains of the Wu people and the Pangu Hall to prevent the Wu people from destroying his plan. After all, the demons were in charge of the heaven and the Magi were in charge of the earth. If the demons entered the Desolation continent, they would easily trigger an attack from the Wu people. At first, the Wu people also thought that the demons were about to attack, but it turned out to be a false alarm. At the same time, they were furious. The demons had placed the Zhoutian star array in the sky above the Wu people. Wasn't that a blatant provocation? According to the Wu people's Zhu Wu's personality, they would definitely rise up and resist. They would not stop until the heavens fell and the earth split. However, He had broken through and was at a critical moment in practicing the great divine fiend's array. Therefore, Di Jiang and the others could only swallow their anger. Chapter 1093. In today's world, the sorcerer and demon race had risen together, and the two were contending for hegemony. Tens of thousands of races had retreated, and the only ones who could contend against the Wu people were the saints of origin. The demon race had Niuhua, and Laozi had secretly allowed her to guide Junti. Naturally, primordial Tontian would not stir up trouble, and Ro was eager to see the world plunged into chaos. Although Hutu was compassionate, she was definitely not a goody two-shoes like Hanyan. Moreover, the most important thing for her now was to give Ho special treatment. As for Fong Qingshan and Mosquito Dowren, they were racing against time to cultivate in the sea of blood. Under the circumstances that these people did not make a move, the other races on the Desolation continent naturally did not dare to provoke the demon race in the face of the onslaught of the demon race. They did not even make a move when the 10 golden crows were in the Desolation continent, let alone when the demon race had turned out in full force. Moreover, they were not related to the human race, and this matter had nothing to do with them. Naturally, they did not care. Moreover, the rise of the human race also affected their interests. This time, the demon race had made a move to massacre the human race, which was beneficial to them. When the human race was massacred, all the sages and all the races watched with folded arms. It was not without reason that the human race could become the protagonist of the world in the future. Although they were naturally weak and could not be compared to the sorcerer and demon race, they were born with Tao bodies and were favored by nature in the cultivation of Tao techniques. Most importantly, their reproduction speed was not inferior to that of insect-type life forms. Due to many factors, although the human race had been born not long ago, their strength had developed rapidly. As a result, many small and medium-sized races, and even large races, felt a great deal of pressure. However, because the human race was created by Niuhua, and Laozi and the others had established their religion and become sages with the human race, they did not dare to go against the human race openly. They could only play tricks in the dark. Of course, the most important thing was the strength of the human race, so they did not dare to act rashly. Ever since Niuhua created the human race and Laozi and the others established the religion, the development of the human tribe had been rapid, especially the 3 ancestors of the human tribe, Youqiaoshi, Surenshi, and Zhishi. Their cultivation had been growing so fast that it was like a cheat code. In just 1,000 years, they had become sage to be from ordinary people without any cultivation. Moreover, they were not at the level of Kunpeng, but they were not weaker than the 10 great demon marshals. In fact, they were even better than them. Coupled with the merit supreme treasures in their hands, even among the veteran quasi-sages of the Purple Cloud Palace, no one would dare to say that they could defeat them, except for the top few. In a short span of 1,000 years of development, the human race had developed from a newborn race to the upper middle of the 10,000 races of desolation. The speed of development was not slow at all. It was no wonder that they were the main characters of humanity. Unfortunately, there was still too little time. Compared to the main characters of this apocalypse, the power of a human tribe was not worth mentioning at all. Without Dijun, Tai, and the others doing anything, without the Jodion star demon god doing anything, the 10 great demon marshals were enough to defeat the human tribe in an instant. Although the human tribe had many people, almost as many as the sorcerer and demon tribes, there were not many powerful people. After all, the saints had not widely spread their teachings among the human tribe at this time. The powerful people among the human tribe were either like serene and the others, who had broken through with merit supreme treasures, or had great luck and unparalleled opportunities. They were apprenticed to powerful people or obtained treasures. Unfortunately, it was completely useless. It was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. In just 100 years, the population of the human tribe, which was almost comparable to the sorcerer and demon tribes, was reduced by 100 times, 1,000 times. It was fortunate that the human tribe had not been wiped out, seeing that there were only about 1 million of the human tribe left on Mount Shoyong. Dijun finally asked Bai Zhe and the others to stop. This was because the flesh and blood collected to forge the wu-slaying sword was enough. Moreover, the human tribe was Nuwa's creation. He could not just wipe them out for the sake of the Buddha. However, it was not that Dijun did not think so. After all, the human tribe had 7 saints behind them. If it was not for the fact that the Wu people were the first to bear the brunt, the human tribe and the demon tribe would probably still be at odds. Moreover, Dijun really wanted to fight back because he did not give face to the demon tribe. Unfortunately, as the human tribe's population decreased, the negative karma above the demon tribe's river of providence almost solidified. Endless resentful spirits hovered above it, wailing and crying, complaining to Hongjun Tiandao and the Great Path about the injustice of the world. Why did they have to suffer such a heavy blow when they stood aloof from worldly affairs? Of course, if that was the case, Dijun would not care at all. This was because in the Desolation Society, the strong preyed on the weak. Was there any lack of killing? Back when the demon tribe was unified, there was no lack of killing. Unfortunately, the human tribe was different from the other races. Seeing that the human tribe was about to be wiped out, Dijun already felt a sense of impending doom before the saints even made a move. He was not the only one. All the demon tribe members felt the same way. In other words, once the human tribe was wiped out, the demon tribe would be buried with them. Therefore, Dijun had to order for the massacre to stop. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years passed. The great war of sorcerers and demons was approaching, and the atmosphere was getting heavier. Buzz! On this day, the sound of a sword suddenly rang throughout the Desolation Society. In an instant, everyone's heart skipped a beat. It was as if a sharp blade was hanging in the air. The sound of the sword shook the sky and entered the galaxy. It seemed to be able to pierce through the 9 heavens and 10 earths and reach the edge of the universe. It exuded an aura that made one's soul tremble. It was hard to describe what kind of sword sound this was. It was like a carving knife that wanted to embed itself into everyone's soul. Anyone who practiced swordsmanship or had sword-type numinous treasures would have their swords fly out uncontrollably at this moment. Most of the swords were pointed at the ground with their hilts facing the direction of the heavenly court. It was as if they were worshipping. Of course, there were also connate numinous treasures like the 4 immortal slaying swords, the Qingping sword, and the sword of Avicii. Although they flew out uncontrollably, they were not worshipping, but fighting. This was clearly the birth of a sword-type treasure. If nothing went wrong, Dijun of the demon tribe should have successfully forged the wu-slaying sword. This sword was forged by the demon tribe, and even Nuwa. It was made with the copper of the first sun and the essence of the stars as the main materials, tempered with the true fire of the sun, extracted with the blood of billions of humans, and used the souls of billions of dead humans as the sword soul. It was used to smelt malevolent energy, murderous energy, resentment, and other bad luck. When the sword was completed, it was unknown whether it was because the treasure was so powerful that it became a post-celestial treasure as soon as it was born that it aroused the jealousy of the heavens, or because this treasure was too murderous and had too much karma. Rumble. Thunder rumbled. The sky above the heavenly court was completely covered by a terrifying sea of thunder and fire. Countless lightning bolts flashed, and upon closer inspection, these lightning bolts were slightly purple in color. They were very dazzling, but they were the weakened version of the purple heaven divine thunder. Fortunately, although the divine thunder was powerful, the Wu-slaying sword was not easy to deal with. Every time it struck the sword, countless sparks would fly, and the Wu-slaying sword would be severely injured. However, the Wu-slaying sword had also been tempered by the power of thunder. Under repeated strikes, it had become more condensed and sharper. It seemed like it could tear the void and cut through everything. Chapter 1094. Roar. Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. Just as everyone was still shocked that the demon clan had actually refined a postnatal killing treasure and felt as if there was a thorn in their backs, the sorcerer clan also sent out a strange sound. Shaman. With a roar, a murderous aura that was not weaker than the Wu-slaying sword soared into the sky. Following that, a figure could be seen standing in the middle of the 100,000 great mountains. His figure was as deep as an abyss and as tall as a mountain, and his aura was boundless. Vast energy surged around him, and when he stepped on the ground, it was even more boundless. His whole body emitted an ancient desolation aura. His chi and blood stirred the wind and clouds, and his fighting spirit shook the surroundings. Boundless, murderous clouds condensed in the sky. For a moment, the sky changed color, and the sun and moon lost their light. However, he was different from the other Zhu Wu, who was full of murderous aura and emitted a violent and destructive aura. Even mountains of corpses and seas of blood would tremble in front of them. This person also had a shocking murderous aura. Not only did he have a great virtue, but he also had an awe-inspiring righteousness. Because he cultivated the lineage of Earth, he had the law of Earth, and he had the support of boundless merits. Although he could not compare to Niuwa, a sage, he was still a minority among the desolation. This person was none other than the 13th Zhu Wu of the Wu people, the newly born Ho-yi. When the demon race refined the Wu-slaying sword, Ho-yi, under the guidance of Dijiang, Hutu, and the others, jumped 3 levels from the early stage of Sage to Be to the late stage of Sage to Be. He was on the same level as Zhurong, Gonggong, and the others. Although it was a little weak, it did not affect his combat power. What a lich! No wonder he is the protagonist of this calamity. Before, the demon race refined the supreme treasure. After that, the Wu people and Ho-yi improved bravely. Looks like the great war of the sorcerers and demons is about to begin. Both races have their own strengths. I wonder which one is stronger. Fortunately, if the gap is too big, it would not be good for the other races, individuals, or even sages if one race won the great war of the sorcerers and demons. Seeing this scene, everyone knew that the great shaman-demon war was imminent. Sure enough, at this point, the sorcerer and demon tribes did not want to delay any longer. They wanted to give it their all, or rather, the sages of Hongjun Tiandao did not want them to delay any longer. If they allowed them to delay any longer, the strength of the two tribes would increase, and then they would be unable to escape. Moreover, if the sorcerer and demon tribes did not retreat, they would be blocking the path of too many people. Hongjun Tiandao, sages, humans, the arrow was knocked on the bowstring, and it had to be released. They had been preparing for many years. Once the two races started the war, even though they went all out, it was still orderly. Kill! Kill! With the 12 Zhu Wu as their leader, the Wu people led Shiyu, Xing Tian, Xiang Lu, Ju Feng, and the other great shamans, as well as the 12 tribes of the Wu people and billions of Wu people warriors. At the same time, they revealed their true forms of the Wu people and their fighting spirit sword. The demon race was led by Di Jun and Tai, with Fushi, the Kuanpeng, and Shiha as support. They led the 10 demon marshals, 365 Zodion star demon deities, billions of demon soldiers, and demon generals. They used the law phenomenon and held their numinous treasures and were not at a disadvantage. With Mount Bujo as the center, the two races started a long war that was even more tragic than the war between the dragon race and the phoenix race. Although Mount Bujo was the center, the entire central region was filled with the figures of the sorcerers and demons. This was especially so because they had to avoid the Jotian star formation of the 12 Zhu Wu and Di Jun, so that the mortals would not be harmed when the immortals fought. Therefore, the battlefield was even more spread out. Seeing the war between the sorcerers and demons finally broke out, whether it was Sanqing, Zhuani, or the two saints of the celestial demon heaven, or Ro of the celestial demon heaven, Hongjun of the purple cloud palace, all of them smiled. The decisive battle they had been waiting for had finally arrived, and the Eon was finally coming to an end. No matter which of the sorcerers and demons won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory, and they would no longer be able to dominate the world. They would be eliminated soon, because they would never allow such a great race to exist. Next would be the era of the sages, their era. Compared to Sanqing and the two saints of the West, Lady Niuhua and Zhu Wu had a heavy heart, because this concerned the life and death of the two races. They had no choice but to pay attention to the impending war, because this was a decisive battle of life and death. Of course, Hutu paid attention to the relationship between brothers and sisters, and Niuhua paid attention to the fate. Unfortunately, although they paid attention to it, they could only pay attention to it, and could only make some preparations for each race before the war. For example, Niuhua helped refine the Wu-slaying sword, and Hutu helped train Hou-yi. When the war started, they could no longer fight, not only because of the ban of Hongjun, but also because someone was blocking the gate. Although Hutu and Niuhua did not dare to disobey the order of Hongjun, as a precaution, both Zhuanti and Sanqing took action after the war started. Zhuanti came to the Emperor of Heaven to reminisce with Niuhua, and Sanqing came to the netherworld to discuss Taoism with Hutu. As for Hongjun, he stared at the Blood Sea and the East Sea, for fear that they would make trouble at this critical moment. As for Ro, no one was watching him. After all, he was a demon, and more than anyone else, he was happy to see demons wreaking havoc. The more chaotic and disastrous it was, the more he would benefit. Moreover, no matter who the liches were, it would not be good for the development of the demon cult. Therefore, there was no need to worry that he would make trouble. Although Hongjun had banned saints from participating in the war, and Hutu and Niuhua were also blocked, there was no need to. But the tragedy of the war between the liches and demons was not something that the dragon and phoenix trials could compare to. After all, while saints could not participate, the liches and demons still had the combat power of saints of the mixed element. Both races also knew that normal battles and probing were completely useless against the liches and demons. After all, they already knew themselves and their enemies well. Therefore, once the war started, it became white-hot. Set up the formation, activate the 12 divine beings killing formation, summon the true body of Father God. Following Dijiang's shout, the Dragon King the Candle Dragon, Gonggong, Zhurong, Xianming, Hou-yi, and the others moved at the same time. They quickly took their positions and activated the 12 divine beings killing formation. In a flash, the formation was formed. In the blink of an eye, a burly man as tall as Mount Bujo materialized. He stood in the air, holding a green battle axe in his hand. He exuded an ancient and tangible pressure. The aura of power intimidated everyone. Suppression for all eternity. Zodion star formation, activate. Almost at the same time as Emperor Jiang, Di Jun, Tai, Shiha, Fushi, Kuanpeng, and the others set up the ancient book and river diagram formation. With the 365 star demon gods as the eye of the formation, the Zodion star formation was activated at a speed visible to the naked eye. A scholar who had been away for 3 days should be looked at in a new light. Compared to the last liches and demons war, this time, the speed at which the two races set up the formation, the perfection of the formation, their coordination, and even the explosive power of the formation had improved by more than a level. Chapter 1095. In the last great sorcerer and demon war, the combat power of the Jotion star formation was only comparable to that of an ordinary sage of origin who had just broken through. After the great divine being's killing formation summoned Pangu's real body, it had the strength of the first level of the primordial chaos. At this moment, even the onlooking sages, except for Hutu, felt a sense of pressure. Obviously, the present couldn't be compared to the past. Both the Jotion star formation and the great divine being's killing formation had improved to the second or even the third level of the primordial chaos. In comparison, the demon tribe had made greater progress. In addition to the addition of an expert like Shiha and the lunar star origin, more importantly, with the birth of the Tao of humanity and the birth of the sages, the world origin had been strengthened, and the corresponding starry sky origin had also been strengthened. In addition, Tai did not need to suppress the bell of chaos this time, and the most important thing was the support of the starfruit tree. Although the starfruit tree was not as good as the Jotion star formation map in Feng Qingshan's hands, it was born with the star origin and was born with the star great way. There was also a part of the star formation map on it. Together with the Jotion star on the bell of chaos, it could barely form a formation map. In comparison, the Wu people had lost Hutu. Although Hui was good, he was still not as good as Hutu. After all, one was at the peak of the sage-to-be peak, and the other was at the late stage. One was the direct descendant of Pangu, and the other was much thinner. In addition, the 12 Zhu Wu were like the 10 golden crows of the same mother. Their minds were connected, but their connection with Hui was much weaker, although they had been working together for a long time. Fortunately, Di Jiang and the others had made progress, and the power of the formation had been further explored. Most importantly, this time, the true body of Pangu was no longer fighting with bare hands. Instead, there was an additional cyan giant axe. Of course, this was not because they had gathered the 3 treasures of opening heaven and recreated the treasure of chaos, the heaven-splitting axe. That was not realistic. If that was the case, there was no need to fight. In order to enhance the attacking power of Pangu's real body, Hutu, Dijiang, and the others chose an axe spirit treasure from the secret vault. It was actually the prototype of Xingtian's Ganqi axe in the original orbit. However, like Hou Yi's sun-shooting bow, it was a remnant treasure left by the Chaos Demon God. Moreover, it was more well-preserved and of a higher grade. After that, Hutu used his primordial energy to refine and repair it. Then he used all kinds of top divine materials and rare treasures to refine it. Although it wasn't as powerful as a chaos spiritual treasure, it wasn't any weaker than the 3 treasures of creation. Kill! The real body of Panga bellowed and strode forward. He swung the giant axe in his hand and fiercely chopped at the stars in the sky. His attack was clean and neat, without the slightest hesitation. This axe was the absolute sharpness, an unstoppable sharpness. In a trance, he seemed to have returned to the time when the primal chaos had just opened, when the fiend celestials were blocking his path, and when Pangu was slaughtering everything in his path. Defend. Faced with the attack of Pangu's real body, the Luo River Formation, led by Di Jun, Tai, was the first to move. Then, the bell of chaos rang, and the Jotion star formation rose. Endless starlight evolved into a barrier, like a curtain hanging from the sky, in front of Pangu's real body. Defense and counterattack. Boom! Pangu's axe hit the star barrier. Suddenly, an indescribable force exploded, and the whole world was distorted. In a split second, even with Hongjun Tiandao and the saints suppressing the world, the place where Pangu's real body and the Jotion star formation collided was like fragile porcelain, cracking like a turtle. It seemed that the whole sky would shatter at any time. Pangu's axe was sharp, but the star barrier was not weak either. It was like the Book of the Earth, which had been strengthened by the power of the Earth. Its defense was unparalleled. With one blow, they were evenly matched. Again, both Di Jun and Di Jiang were very dissatisfied with this situation. Dijun was dissatisfied with the strengthening of the starry sky origin, and this time, with the addition of the Bell of Chaos, Tai, and Shiha, the Wu people did not gain the upper hand when they lacked Hutu and had to add Ho-I. What Dijun was dissatisfied with was that, in order to increase their chances of winning the Great War of Sorcery and Demon, they not only trained Ho-I with all their strength, but also used the rules and flesh in the secret vault to improve their cultivation. They also asked Hutu to use all kinds of treasures to imitate the Star Banner of the Demon Clan to refine the 12 Divine Killing Banner, but they still did not gain the upper hand. Since they were dissatisfied, and there was no way out, they could only fight to the end. One axe to open the chaos. But after the blow, the real body of Pangu did not hesitate at all and continued to attack. And this time, it was Pangu's heaven-opening magic skill, which was as famous as Pangu's Dutian Thunder, the 9 axes of heaven opening. Back then, with the heaven opening axe skill, he not only broke the chaos, opened up the macro world of desolation, but also killed countless demon gods of chaos. Its power was self-evident, but seeing this axe strike, one could see a tyrannical heaven-splitting axe intent circulating in the air. There was a concept that nothing could not be broken. When the axe fell down, the entire world seemed to be split into 2 halves. There was chaotic chi rolling, evolving into the earth, wind, water, and fire. Under the axe light, regardless of whether it was the world, the chaos, or the law of the great path, everything was split apart by the axe. The endless sharpness, power, and infinite strength, it seemed that nothing could stand in front of the axe light. There was not even a trace of resistance. Unfortunately, that was when Pangu was reincarnated. Now, although the formation was used to summon the real body of Pangu, it was not the real body of Pangu, and the axe in his hand was not the real heaven-opening axe of the chaos. Jodian Star, Big Dipper move. Dijun looked at the axe light, narrowed his eyes, and shouted. For a time, endless starlight gathered and turned into a mirror of stars, each of which was engraved with infinite Taoist rhyme, showing ancient patterns, and inlaid with 365 immemorial stars, looking very mysterious. It was like the most perfect work of art in the world. These small mirrors were inlaid with each other, fitting seamlessly, and evolved into a large mirror. From afar, it looked like the entire immemorial starry sky, projecting endless starlight. Buzz! The heaven-opening axe struck the super-large mirror composed of countless small mirrors, and its power was suddenly weakened layer by layer, like mud falling into the sea. Then, an even more terrifying scene appeared. With a flip of these star mirrors, the heaven-opening axe was forcibly lifted, and then the irresistible axe light strangely reversed and quickly returned to the original path. This technique that Dijun used with the Jotian star formation was similar to the Big Dipper move and Xian Kuan shift space grand divine power that Yang Mei used against Hong Jun in the Battle of Chaos. Of course, the power was not the same. After all, regardless of the difference in cultivation, the laws alone were incomparable. One was the Tao of stars, and the other was the Tao of space. Not to mention, Yang Mei's divine power could reverse the foundation, making the attack sharper and more overbearing. Although Dijun's divine power was reversed, it was weakened. Chapter 1096. The biggest difference between the defensive counterattack performed by Dijun using the Jotian star formation and the supernatural powers performed by Yang Mei was that one was a supernatural power while the other was a technique. Just like how one was a Tao and the other was a technique, they could not be compared. However, it was already very rare for Dijun to be able to turn the heaven and earth splitting axe art around. All of the attacks retraced the path they came from and turned back to target Pangu's real body. After all, Pangu's real body and the heaven splitting axe art were not to be underestimated. They represented absolute combat power, unparalleled supernatural powers, and immeasurable power. One axe to split the heavens and earth. Seeing that his attack did not work, not only did it not break through the Jotian star formation, it did not even cause any harm to them. Instead, his opponent used his own power to counterattack. Pangu's real body could not help but be enraged. He backhandedly used the second move of the 9 techniques of splitting the heavens. In an instant, chaos was broken. Earth, wind, water, and fire scattered in all directions. There was a clear and turbid air. In an instant, the clear air floated up and floated into the sky. The turbid air sank and condensed into the ground. The world was vaguely visible. The Zodion star, the gathering of the 3 stars. Pangu's real body was powerful, and Dijun was not easy to deal with either. It had to be said that Dijun was indeed the main character of this calamity. Although Wu people did not have a primordial spirit, they had Pangu's inheritance of splitting the heavens. Although Dijun Tai had heard of the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace, he was not a disciple of Hongjun. If not for the will of heaven, he would definitely be above Niuhua, Zhuanti, and the others once he became a saint. It would not be a problem for him to be on par with Tongtian, Primordial, or even Laozi. The 365 ancient stars burst out with the brightest divine light at the same time, surrounding the 3 pearls, Taiyin, Taiyang, and Ziwei. It slowly rotated and drew closer to him. The power of the 3 stars would combine with the power of the heavens to form a peerless power that would transform into an arrow. The power of the other stars would transform into the shaft of the arrow. The power of the 3 stars would transform into the arrow, and the Zhoutian star formation would transform into a huge bow. With a swoosh, it shot towards the light of the splitting heaven axe. Rumble. The axe light and the arrow chi clashed violently, causing the world and the void to distort. It was such a bizarre scene that those below the Grand Luo realm could not even observe it, let alone approach it. Even Grand Luo and demi-saints could not help but feel an indescribable pain and disgust at the sight of it. They opened their mouths and spat out mouthfuls of blood. The 2 extreme powers clashed, almost as if they were mortal enemies. The effects of the collision were extremely terrifying, and a terrifying area of destruction was formed between the 2. It was extremely terrifying. The entire world seemed to distort. The aftermath scattered in all directions, and heaven and earth returned to dust. Pangu's true form and the Zodion star were naturally peerless in terms of defense. While the devouring and destructive powers at the center were formidable, it was not enough to shake them. However, the other liches around them were unlucky. They could not put up any resistance as they were devoured. Those who were not Grand Magi would not survive after falling into it. They had met their match, and the general had met his talent. The attacks of Pangu's true form were bold and direct, but they were invincible. They had an irresistible sharpness that could slash through anything that stood in their way. Moreover, the power of the law of power was able to destroy all techniques and crush everything in its path. In the face of absolute power and absolute sharpness, any powerful foe would be utterly destroyed and reduced to ashes. While the attacks of the demon race's Zodion star formation were not weak, they were clearly inferior to Pangu's true form. That was why Pangu's main focus was on technique and quantity. The power of the attack and the stars converged like a tidal wave, densely packed like a chaotic storm that swept over. Defensive techniques, layer upon layer of weakening, pulling, and shifting. They fought back and forth, and were evenly matched. For a moment, the situation was in a stalemate. Pangu's true form could not destroy the Zhoutian star, and the Zhoutian star could not destroy Pangu's true form. If there were no changes in the situation, the victor between the liches and demons would be decided by who could outlast the other. Would the 365 primordial demon gods of the demon race be the first to fail, or would Ho-E be the first to drag them down? Once one side made a mistake, it would immediately attract a thunderous attack from the other side. However, such a thing did not happen. Seeing that neither side could do anything to the other, Dijun finally used a trump card that he had specially prepared for the Wu people in Pangu's true form. Shake down the stars, destroy the heavens and earth. Die. In order to deal with Pangu's true form and to numb Di Jiang and the others as much as possible, Dijun made up his mind. He had his demon gods blow up all the star banners, which were top-grade acquired spiritual treasures, at once, turning them into countless destructive meteors that crashed into the axe light and Pan-Gu's true form. Oomph. If you had blown up the entire formation, I might have been able to retreat. But what can you do to me if you blow up the star banners? Seeing that Dijun had exhausted all his tricks, Dijong's expression turned solemn, but he did not panic. Instead, he let out a cold laugh. Demon God Destruction with one axe. As soon as he said that, Pan-Gu's true form chopped down with his axe. The strike was as fast as lightning and unstoppable. Under the axe light, hundreds and thousands of chaos demon gods were either beheaded, dismembered, or reduced to pieces. Corpses piled up and blood flowed into the sea. It was a gruesome sight. Bang! As expected, the power of the star banners collided with the axe light again. Neither could do anything to the other, and both vanished in a thin air. Puff! At this moment, the aftermath of Pan-Gu's true form struck. Dijong and the others naturally thought it was the same as before and did not care about it at all. After all, they were very confident in the defense of Pan-Gu's true form. However, he did not notice that a strange figure had appeared without a sound, and the moment it appeared, it stabbed its sword into the true Pan-Gu's body and heart. The Wu-killing sword, repairing the plank road in the open, but crossing the river in the dark. Although the self-explosion of the star banners was a powerful attack, it was just Dijun's camouflage. The real trump card was the acquired supreme killing treasure that Dijun had sacrificed hundreds of millions of humans to refine. He had been hiding it all this time and only hid it in the aftermath of the explosion at this moment. This was the ultimate feast that Dijun had prepared for Pan-Gu's true form. As expected, the careless Dijong and the others were completely unprepared, or even if they knew, they would not care too much about it. After all, the defense of Pan-Gu's true form was so strong that even the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man, the 5 lotus seats, and the innate 5 flags couldn't compare with it. Even Feng Qingshan's 5 elements flags and the cauldron of heaven and earth were not as good as the defense of Laozi's Tai, Chi, painting, and Mosquito Doran's 24 grade red lotus of fire. Even Pan-Gu's star banners could only tear a hole in it at most. What they did not know was that the Wu-killing sword was the bane of the Wu people. Although it was not necessarily sharper than Pan-Gu's star banners and Godslayer, it was unique in dealing with the Wu people. But when the Wu-killing sword collided with Pan-Gu's body, sparks could be seen, and Pan-Gu's true form exerted his terrifying defense, which was comparable to the 3 treasures of opening the heavens. It seemed that he was going to resist the attack of the Wu-killing sword and break it. Chapter 1097. The Wu-slaying sword was indeed the nemesis of the Wu people. Although Pan-Gu's true body's defenses were strong, the Wu-slaying sword was clearly superior. It had actually pierced Pan-Gu's true body. Although it hadn't pierced through the heart, it had still caused great damage to Pan-Gu's true body. As a breakthrough point, this was clearly where Ho-E had transformed. They had originally thought that the heart would be their main target of defense. By placing Ho-E there, they could reduce the chances of him being attacked. However, they hadn't expected that Dijun's attack would be fatal. Actually, being pierced by the Wu-slaying sword wasn't much. What was truly fatal was the boundless resentment that erupted with the sword chi. It was the resentment of billions of humans, and humans were destined to be the main characters of the world. The resentment that represented humanity might even have the shadow of Hongjun Tiandao. The power of the world and the rise of the human race had to go through a test. This was all caused by Hongjun Tiandao. How could the rise of dragons and phoenixes not have been tested? How could the rise of liches and demons not have been tested? How could the human race have been tested? It was just that Hongjun Tiandao wanted to use the resentment of the power of humanity to deal with Pan-Gu's true body. As expected, at this moment, it worked like a surprise attack. Countless resentful souls kept attacking the soul of the true Pan-Gu body. Normally, this wouldn't have been much, but at this critical moment in the Great War, it was a fatal blow. In a fight between experts, victory and defeat was decided in an instant. Although Di Jiang and the others had forced the sword out as quickly as they could the moment the Wu-slaying sword stabbed into Hou Yi's body, they were still one step too slow. Hou Yi had been the weakest link in the great divine fiend's formation. Not only had the defense of Pan Gu's true body been broken, but the balance of the great divine fiend's formation had also been destroyed. Most importantly, the resentment that represented humanity and humanity, as well as Hong Jun Tiandao's hidden attacks, had caught Di Jiang and the others off guard. Their seas of consciousness had suffered a series of attacks. Although they hadn't suffered too much damage, their movements and reactions had undoubtedly become much slower. Take his life while he's down. How could Di Jun let go of such an excellent opportunity that he had fought so hard for? Zhou star formation explode. He was ruthless to his enemies, but he was even more ruthless to himself. In order not to let go of this great opportunity, Di Jun first detonated the star banner, and now he directly detonated the entire Zhou star formation. This was like the self-destruction of a primordial chaos realm expert. However, at this moment, Di Jun and Tai Yi did not care at all. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. If they could kill the 12 Zhu Wu, or even just half of them, it would be worth it, and their sacrifices would not have been in vain. As for the Wu people and the 12 Zhu Wu, they were not much better off. Each of them suffered more injuries than Di Jun and the others. After all, they had been stabbed by the Wu-slaying sword. This was especially true for Hou Yi, whose cultivation had been hastened. He was lucky that he did not die in that attack. As for Pan Gu's Dao transformation, while it was an immeasurable fortune for the world of desolation, it was immeasurable destruction for Pan Gu himself. Therefore, the 12 Zhu Wu were also injured on top of their injuries. Rumble. The collision exploded with unparalleled penetrative and destructive power. The void around them collapsed on the spot, and countless elements roared and roared. The sorcerer and demon tribes, who were already the first to bear the brunt of the backlash, were in deep trouble. As the storm swept over them, Di Jiang, Di Jun, and the others had no time to retreat. They could only fight it head-on. Tai Yi brought out the Bell of Chaos. Di Jun and Shiha brought out the river diagram and the wheel of sun and moon. Fuxi brought out the painting of mountains and rivers, and Kunpeng brought out the Demon Master Palace. As for the Wu people, they could not use any spirit treasures, so they could only use the real Zhu Wu to fight it head-on. They also used various nomological spells, such as Hou Yi's Earth Guardian and Di Jiang's Spatial Barrier. However, they had already used up most of their strength in the previous battle, and the backlash later on had been heavily injured. Now that they were facing an attack that was similar to the self-destruction of a mixed essence saint, they were quickly overwhelmed. On the demon tribe's side, the first to fall were the surviving starry demon immortals and the 10 demon marshals, followed by Shiha. On the Wu people's side, it was Hou Yi, Xinming, and Zhurong. Of course, this was not the worst. The worst was that Mount Buzhou had collapsed. Mount Buzhou, as the heavenly pillar of desolation, supported the heavens and the earth, and was known as the #1 treasure of desolation. If it could be extracted, it would be even better than the jade plate of creation. In the original trajectory, even if Mount Buzhou was broken, the primordial Lord of Heaven could still use half of Mount Buzhou to refine and acquire treasure, the flipping sky seal, with unparalleled power. Chapter 1098. In the desolation world, primordial treasures were precious, but few people owned them except for the major sects and some giants. Therefore, acquired treasures were the norm. But even so, most of them were acquired spiritual treasures. As for acquired supreme treasures, they were not as rare as the primordial supreme treasures, but they could be counted with 2 hands. The flipping sky seal was one of them, and its attack power was extremely strong. During the War of God's Investiture, Yin Jiao became a master and obtained Guang Chengzi's flipping sky seal, but he did not help King Wu to defeat Zhou. Instead, he helped the Shang to stop Shiqi. Relying on the spiritual treasures in his hands, he was in the limelight for a while. In the end, in order to deal with the flipping sky seal, Guangqingzi and the others had to borrow 4 primordial 5-direction flags. Half of Buzhou Mountain's power had been reduced to less than a tenth of its original power, and the flipping sky seal that was refined from it already had such power. Just by looking at one spot, one could tell the whole leopard. One could imagine the power of Buzhou Mountain at its peak. To say that it wasn't weaker than the jade disk of good fortune at all, and was even more powerful than it. Unfortunately, after the great tribulation of creation, the great tribulation of ominous beasts, the great tribulation of dragon and phoenix, the battle between Taoism and demon, and especially after the appearance of Hongjun Tiandao, which constantly compressed and stripped the power of Mount Buzhou had long been strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. It was no longer as prosperous as it used to be. At the beginning of the great tribulation of dragon and phoenix, it was difficult to get close to Mount Buzhou, not to mention climbing it. Before the great tribulation of dragon and phoenix, although the range of pressure was reduced, it still made zenith heaven golden immortals flinch. After the great tribulation of dragon and phoenix, Hongjun Tiandao was born, and Fang Qingshan took the opportunity to climb to the top, but he was almost crushed by Pan Gu's pressure. Before the great tribulation of sorcerers and demons, anyone could climb to the top to admire Pan Gu's legacy. From this, it could be seen that Mount Buzhou had not much power for a long time. Not to mention this time, the battlefield of the great tribulation of sorcerers and demons was around Mount Buzhou. When 2 primordial chaos sages fought, the fish in a moat were caught in the crossfire. Especially at the last moment, the self-destruction of the 2 large formations finally overwhelmed Mount Buzhou. Crack! A sound that was no less than the explosion of Zhoutian star formation and the Dao disintegration of Pangu was heard. Then, the towering Mount Buzhou, which seemed as if it would not fall even if the heavens and earth were to be destroyed, slowly tilted. The sorcerer and demon tribes, Dijun, Dijiang, and the spectating sages and mighty ones all widened their eyes at the sight of this. A look of horror flashed across their faces. In the blink of an eye, the sound of something breaking resounded from Mount Buzhou to its complete collapse. Actually, it happened in the blink of an eye, and it was to the point that everyone was utterly unable to react in time. Mountain, king, king's, a huge hole appeared in the sky where Mount Buzhou used to be. The water of the heavenly river poured down, drowning countless living beings. The shaman and demon clans fought with all their might, and there were less than 100 of them left. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they were still heavily injured. How could they resist the impact of the surging and clamorous muddy water? After all, not to mention the power of the heavenly river itself, just the gravitational force of it descending from the 9 heavens was sufficient to crush anyone below the golden immortal realm into a meat patty. In the blink of an eye, countless sorcerer and demon clans were drowned in the raging waves. It was not just the sorcerer and demon clans. The sky pillar was broken, the firmament was broken, and all living beings on the Desolation continent were affected. Big tribes and big clans were fine. They had masters, formations, and spiritual treasures, so they could barely defend themselves. However, those itinerant cultivators and small clans with low cultivation were unlucky. They were either hit by the water of the heavenly river or swept away by it, dying in an instant. Pulling one hair would affect the whole body. Not only was there the water of the heavenly river, but there were also dragons and snakes rising from the ground. Countless elements of the earth, water, wind, and fire surged. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Underground fire spewed out. In an instant, the land was filled with whales and corpses piled up like mountains. Of course, these were not the most important things. The most important thing was that the collapse of Mount Buzhou brought about endless karma. The 12 Zuwu, Dijun, and the others, who were trying their best to hold on, finally could not hold on any longer, just like Mount Buzhou. The collapse of Mount Buzhou and the backlash of heaven and earth became the straw that broke the camel's back. Old habits could not be reversed, and the disease was beyond cure. Although the sorcerer and demon clans were prosperous in the past, they had also accumulated an unknown amount of karma. It was just like the 10 days of desolation. It was just that at that time, luck was at its peak, so the karma was suppressed. Now, the karma of the collapse of Mount Bujo poured down, and the giant wheel immediately sank. They could feel the primordial spirit and true spirit in their bodies dissipating. Di Jun, and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They did not expect that they would not die in the hands of the other party, but perish together in such a way. This was probably a result that no one could have expected. Humph, Hongjun Tiandao, what a sage. Let's wait and see. In the samsara, Hutu, who had seen all of this, could not help but snort coldly. His face was as gloomy as the 9 serenities. For a moment, the entire netherworld and the netherworld were in turmoil, as if they could break out at any time. Seeing this, Sanshing was frightened. He held the treasure in his hand tightly, for fear that Hutu would go berserk. Fortunately, Hutu seemed to have a little sense, or he was more concerned about the Wu people, so he did not attack them. In fact, what they did not know was that at this moment, Hutu was feeling lucky. If he had not listened to Fang Qingshan's words at the beginning and left Di Jiang and the others a hand, preserving a part of the essence blood and true spirit, he was afraid that at this moment they would really be dead. Freeze! Hutu took action. With a shake of his body, he left the netherworld and appeared in the great war of sorcerers and demons. With a wave of his hand, he took out his golden plate of 6 paths of reincarnation. A black and white brilliance sprinkled down, instantly protecting all the remaining Wu people. Watching Huda leave, Sanshing did not stop him. For one thing, now that the great war of sorcerers and demons was over, it was no longer necessary. For another, they did not want to provoke Hutu, who was already on the verge of rage. What was more, just now, Hutu's violent aura spread in all directions, supported by the power of the earth. Even with his cultivation, Sanshing could not help but tremble, and his back was wet with cold sweat. The 3 of them looked at each other, and a bitter smile appeared on their faces. It was not only because of Hutu's strength, but also because of the fall of Mount Bujo. Although they had schemed against the liches and demons, they had never thought of scheming against Mount Bujo. Sanshing claimed to be the authentic Pangu people, and Mount Bujo was the most powerful symbol of Pangu. Now, even if they did not kill Borin, Borin would die because of them. How could they, who claimed to be the authentic Pangu people, feel embarrassed? That was not all. The key was that the fall of Mount Bujo brought endless karma. Although the karma was mainly concentrated on the sorcerer and demon tribes, the sages who participated in the scheme to stop Hutu and Nuwa did not get any better. Everyone had karma. In a short period of time, without great luck and merit, it was impossible for them to improve their cultivation. What was more, the karma would be transferred to their disciples. Chapter 1099. Although the fall of Mount Bujo was an earth-shattering event, it did not affect the Blood Sea, East Sea, Tianweishan, and Hongjun at all. Of course, it did not mean that there were no repercussions. The Blood Sea, East Sea, and Tianweishan were easy to deal with. The impact on Hongjun was huge, but it was a good one. To Hongjun Tiandao, the fall of the heavenly pillar and the destruction of the firmament. Although the world and the origin of Hongjun Tiandao would be damaged compared to the fact that he was about to have perfect control over the entire desolation, this loss was not worth mentioning. However, to the others, it was a huge responsibility. This was especially so for Sanshing, Zhuanti, and the others. After all, they participated in the great sorcerer and demon war. Although they were not the main culprits for the fall of the heavenly pillar and the destruction of the firmament, they were accomplices who added fuel to the fire. Therefore, it was not too late to mend the pen after the sheep was lost. In order to reduce the negative karma, everyone could not help but help at the first moment. Now that Mount Bujo had fallen, not only was there no more heavenly pillar, but even the firmament had been destroyed. The most important thing to do now was to block the hole. Immediately after the fall, Sanshing made his move. Laozi's heart moved, and the Taiji diagram was unleashed. It turned into a golden light and flew towards the center of the great sorcerer and demon war. It stopped the surging water of the heavenly river. At the same time, the Xian Huang pagoda of heaven and earth flew out and blocked the big hole in the sky. With his help, the surging water of the heavenly river, which was like the tides of the sun and moon, gradually calmed down and poured back into the hole. The Milky Way, which fell from the 9 heavens, also slowed down. There was a limit to one's strength, and saints were no exception. It was not an easy task to use 2 treasures in a row and to stop the raging water of the heavenly river. It was fine for a short period of time, but after a long period of time, one would gradually be unable to hold on. Fortunately, he was not fighting alone. Following closely behind Laozi, a ray of rainbow light flashed by, illuminating the skies with a 5-colored light. It was the Panga banner of the primeval Lord of Heaven. The colorful light shone brightly, and it complemented the Tai Chi diagram. Then, a few rays of light flickered. It was the magic treasures of other sages. Tong Tian's immortal slaying sword diagram was full of murderous aura. The earth, water, wind, and fire all dissipated upon contact. Nua's map of mountains and rivers, like Hutu, protected the remaining demon tribe members. Zhuani's tree of 7 wonders and the 12th great golden lotus were also shining with auspicious lights. Not only the 6 sages, but also the mighty figures from all over the Desolation Lands, such as Zhen Yuanzi from the 5 Villages Temple, Ancestor Hong Yin from the Fire Cloud Cave, the Queen Mother of the West from Mount Kunlun, the Dragon Mother from the Dragon Tribe, and even the 4 holy beasts of heaven and earth took out their most precious treasures, the Earth Book, the 9 soul-dispersing gourd, and the Kunlun mirror. As they worked together, the hole was finally blocked. Temporarily, and the land where the water of the heavenly river was wreaking havoc gradually calmed down. The sky was blocked, but there were still 2 problems at the moment. One was what to do about the hole. They could not let the sages stay here all the time. Even if they were willing, they would not be able to bear it. The other was the collapse of the heavenly pillar. Without the support of heaven and earth, it would be easy for heaven and earth to return to one and reunite. When that time came, it would probably be a repeat of the chaos. The primordial spirits of the sages were entrusted to Hongjun Tiandao. As long as Hongjun Tiandao was not destroyed, the sages would not die. Just like in the last great war of sorcerers and demons, Nuwa and Hongjun fell one after another. But because Hongjun Tiandao was still alive, they paid a small price and were resurrected again. However, if heaven and earth returned to one and the chaos was repeated, the situation would be very bad. Therefore, there was a more important thing to do at the moment besides mending the sky, and that was to find a replacement for Mount Buzhou to support the sky. However, there were not many things that could support the sky, not to mention the quality of primordial spiritual treasures. Even ordinary primordial treasures would not be able to support the sky for long. Fellow Taoists, I have the 5-color stone that I obtained from the Treasure Division Cliff all those years ago. It can be used to mend the sky. However, this stone is abnormally sturdy, and it is far from what an ordinary furnace can refine. Just as everyone was thinking about how to deal with the 2 thorny problems at the moment, mending the sky and supporting the sky, Nuwa spoke slowly. However, there was a hidden meaning in her words. Ordinary alchemy furnaces could not be refined. Obviously, they had to find an unusual alchemy furnace. Looking at the desolation, the only unusual alchemy furnace that could be used was the cauldron of heaven and earth in Fang Qingshan's hands. However, she did not have a good relationship with Fang Qingshan. Moreover, she had a black record. Back then, she borrowed the cauldron of heaven and earth and did not return it. It even led to the death of the Lich during the First War. Therefore, what Nuwa meant was for everyone to borrow the cauldron of heaven and earth. However, Nuwa did not have a good relationship with Fang Qingshan of the Blood Sea. Sanqing and Zhuanti did not have a good relationship with the Blood Sea. Therefore, in the end, they could only look at Hutu. Although she did not say anything, her meaning was clear. Hutu snorted coldly, but did not refuse. She was a compassionate person, looking at the tragedy of the desolation, especially because the Wu people had played a part in it. She was willing to help them. Today, Mount Buzhou has fallen. The sky is broken, and all living beings are suffering. Feng Daoist, please lend us the cauldron of heaven and earth for mending the sky. Huda bowed in the direction of the Blood Sea and said in a clear voice. As soon as she finished speaking, the void parted like a curtain. A huge cauldron with 2 ears for legs and 8 sides, symbolizing yin and yang for divisions, and 8 trigrams flew in front of everyone and stopped moving. Seeing this, everyone could not help but let out a sigh of relief. With this cauldron, mending the sky would not be a problem. Nuo was also overjoyed. After all, if the sky was mended, she would be able to get the biggest share of the merit. At that time, not only could she make up for the loss of the Great War of the Lich and Demon, she might even be able to advance further. She took out the 72 pieces of 5-colored stones that she had traded with Hong Jun from Feng Qingshan and threw them into the cauldron one by one. She used the law of creation to refine it. After 49 days, only 1 piece of 5-colored stone had not been melted. Nuo did not care. She held the melted liquid and flew to the hole. Taoist, please move the spiritual treasures away, Nuo said to Laozi and the others. Laozi and the others did as they were told. They moved the spiritual treasures that were used to plug the hole, such as the Xianhuang exquisite pagoda of heaven and earth. Nuo applied the successfully refined materials to the hole at lightning speed. For a moment, there was a dazzling brilliance. In a flash, the 5-colored stone and the sky merged into one. There was no sign of it being broken. Seeing that the sky was intact, the water of the heavenly river no longer flowed. Everyone could not help but let out a sigh of relief and put away their respective treasures. Nuo looked at the last piece of 5-colored stone in her hand. It was unknown whether it was because she felt it was useless or because she had other plans. She threw it casually, and it landed on Mount Huagua, which was known as the ancestor of the 10 continents and the dragon of the 3 islands in the East Sea. After mending the sky, the next task was to find something to support the sky. This was because if they could not find something to replace Mount Buzhou, not only would the world become unstable, natural disasters would occur everywhere. If there were any unforeseen events, or after a long time, the world might slowly merge into one and return to chaos. However, mending the sky was easy, but supporting it was difficult. It was not so easy to find something suitable. Chapter 1100. Back then, when the chaos was broken and the heaven and earth were opened, the world was unstable and the heaven and earth wanted to merge. However, Pangu stood up and stabilized the world. Heaven and earth were separated, but Pangu died of exhaustion, breaking the chaos, opening the heaven and earth, and killing the devil god had already overwhelmed Pangu. Supporting the sky was just the last straw that broke the camel's back. But thinking about who Pangu was, his ferocious power was still there. Even in his death, he could make Hong Jun Tiandao feel helpless. To be the last straw for Pangu, obviously, the difficulty of supporting the heaven and earth could be imagined. Now that the desolation had been open for a long time, the heaven and earth were much more stable than at the beginning. There were the heaven realm, the underworld, the 4 holy beasts of heaven and earth, and the Hong Jun fusing the way, and the sage Mu Shou on behalf of the heaven. So the difficulty of supporting the heaven and earth was far less than when Pangu supported the heaven. But that was only relative. Just now, there was only a hole in the heaven. Laozi and the others used their spiritual treasures to block the hole, but after a long time, they were also somewhat powerless. Therefore, now that the heaven had been mended, the pillar of the heaven and earth, Mount Buzhou, had been broken, it was a very difficult problem to find something to replace Mount Buzhou. What could support the heaven and earth? The most important thing was that it would not harm their own interests. Otherwise, if Laozi were to offer the Xianhuang exquisite pagoda of heaven and earth, the original Pangu banner, or the Tongtian 4 fairy killing swords, it would not be a problem to support the heaven. But this was obviously impossible to achieve. For a moment, the sages could not help but look at each other, speechless. At this moment, Tong Tian's ears suddenly moved, as if someone was sending him a voice transmission. But all this, except for Hutu, no one else noticed. Although Huda noticed it, he did not say anything, because this person could hide from the eyes and ears of others, and he was sending a voice transmission to Tong Tian. In the whole desolation, this person was about to appear. And why was this voice transmission at this time? Huda only thought about it for a moment and immediately understood. For a moment, he could not help but reveal a faint smile. Finding the object that supported the heavens was obviously a meritorious deed, not inferior to mending the heavens. But Hongjun didn't tell anyone and didn't say anything in front of everyone. Instead, he transmitted his voice to Skirich. If Laozi and the others found out about this, I wonder what they would think. However, because it had nothing to do with her, and the most important thing at the moment was to fill the gap after Mount Buzhou, Hutu did not expose him. Sure enough, as expected, a look of joy appeared on Tong Tian's face. He pretended to be enlightened and said, I remember now. When I was traveling through the Desolation Sea, I saw a giant turtle in the North Sea. Its body was huge and strong, like a demon god. If I cut off its 4 legs, it could mend the 4 poles of the heavens and become the pillars of the heavens. Taoist, please wait a moment. I'll be back soon. With that, without giving the crowd any time to react, he flew toward the North Sea with a flash of sword light. Seeing Tong Tian's impatient look, Nuwa was still fine, as she already had the merit to mend the heaven. However, Zhuni was filled with envy and jealousy. The expressions on Laozi and Primordial Lord's faces were very subtle. The 3 of them were of the same origin, and they didn't separate from each other like in the original trajectory. Who didn't understand each other? They had never heard of such a strange thing as the sky-supporting black turtle from Tong Tian. Moreover, they knew Tong Tian well and naturally knew that he was not telling the truth. Although they didn't say anything like Hutu, the cracks in their hearts couldn't help but widen. With Tong Tian's speed, even if he didn't borrow the power of Hongjun Tiandao, it wouldn't take long for him to arrive at the North Sea. In a flash of sword light cut through the sky, and Tong Tian's figure appeared over the North Sea. Black Turtle, now that Mount Buzhou has fallen, I want to borrow your limbs. You've already become the pillars of the heavens. Why don't you show yourself quickly? Tong Tian opened his mouth slightly, but a voice fell into the ears of the Black Turtle like a thunder. Since the beginning of the world, the Black Turtle, who had been sleeping most of the time, finally woke up. Who are you? Why did you disturb my sleep? The Black Turtle had just woken up and didn't know that he was about to die. His muffled voice sounded. Black Turtle, now that Mount Buzhou has fallen, I want to borrow your limbs. You've already become the pillars of the heavens. Why don't you show yourself quickly? Sovereign Tong Tian repeated what he had said once again. Why are you still hesitating about such a meritorious thing? Meritorious? The Black Turtle finally understood this time, but the anger in his heart kept rising, and he couldn't stop it. He was born at the beginning of the world, never killed, never left the North Sea, and never got involved in karma. But he didn't expect that today he would be sitting at home or come from the sky. He immediately said coldly, in that case, why don't you support the heavens? How dare you? Tong Tian originally thought that the Black Turtle should agree honestly and then offer his limbs, but he didn't expect that it dared to be angry. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. It seems that you don't know the sages, and you don't know the power of Tong Tian. Tong Tian did not talk nonsense, and directly took out the 4 immortal killing swords. Not copper, not iron, not steel, it was once hidden under Mount Shuya. Without the reversal of yin and yang, how could it not be tempered by water and fire? The god Punisher was fierce, the immortal Slayer was deadly, the immortal trapping was filled with red light, the immortal ending was boundless, the blood of the great Luo immortals stained their clothes. With the sound of a Taoist song, for beams of sword chi, which were no weaker than when the Wu-slaying sword was born, soared into the sky. Sword cries rang out incessantly, exuding a sharp sword intent. It was as if it wanted to tear space apart and sever mountains and rivers. It was incomparably fierce. The sword light illuminated the 9 provinces and shook the 9 heavens. The 4 immortal-slaying swords had been refined by Ro, Hongjun, and Tongtian hand. Even though they had yet to advance to the level of primordial treasures, each one of them was comparable to the Godslayer of the past. Therefore, even if it was just a trace of its power, it was still formidable. The sharpness of the sword light instantly rushed into the 9 heavens. Although the 4 immortal-killing swords were powerful, the black tortoise, who was confronting them, was not at a disadvantage. However, the black tortoise pulled its body out of the North Sea. As expected, it was a giant tortoise that supported the sky. Its body was unimaginably huge. The real body of Zhu Wu seemed to be dwarfed in front of it. More importantly, the momentum of the black tortoise was not inferior to that of the primordial chaos. Moreover, it was not a beginner of the primordial chaos. It had at least the power of the 3rd level of the primordial chaos. At the same time, although the black tortoise broke out, its body obviously carried a slightly tyrannical aura that was incompatible with the desolation. It was even suppressed. For this aura, Tongtian was obviously not unfamiliar, because it was the same as the aura of Yangmei. It belonged to the aura of the chaotic demon god. The outbreak of the black tortoise obviously shocked everyone except Hongjun and Feng Qingshan, including Yangmei. Yangmei did not expect that since the great tribulation of creation, there was such a pure, chaotic demon god in the desolation besides himself. What Sanqing and others did not expect was that in addition to these saints and primordial chaos on the surface, there was actually a demon god, like the black tortoise in the dark in the desolation. The water of the desolation was so deep that it made people's scalp numb. Chapter 1101. Tongtian, since you are a saint of desolation and all living beings in the world are suffering today, if you retreat now, I can let bygones be bygones. The black tortoise stood upright and roared. Its whole body was full of vigor. It looked down at Tongtian, and its voice was like thunder. Although the black tortoise slept all year round and did not care about the world, it also knew that in desolation, if it wanted to fight with a saint, unless it had an absolute advantage, it would be the one who would suffer in the end. What's more, it might not be facing a saint, Sanqing and others, or Hongjun Tiandao, but it was alone and helpless. Therefore, after the black tortoise revealed its cultivation, it was not aggressive and insatiable. Instead, it wanted to oppress people and let Tongtian retreat. Unfortunately, what it did not know was that it had fallen into Hongjun Tiandao's trap from the beginning. Hongjun Tiandao wanted to control desolation, and Mount Buzhou was an unavoidable hurdle. In its plan, it was only a matter of time to push to Mount Buzhou. In order to prepare for a rainy day, it was necessary to make early plans to replace Mount Buzhou's Optimus Prime. The black tortoise was the replacement prepared by Hongjun Tiandao for Mount Buzhou. The black tortoise was evolved from the flesh and blood of the chaotic demon god, and it was the same as the ferocious beasts in the first cultivation cataclysm. However, those ferocious beasts were blinded by the evil spirit of heaven, and they did not inherit the luck and merits of Pangu like Wu people, so they only knew how to kill and became the stepping stone for the rise of dragons and phoenixes. However, the black tortoise was different. Although it was also transformed from a ferocious beast, the tortoise was naturally quiet and peaceful. In addition, Hongjun Tiandao's deliberate scheme, the black tortoise had been sleeping in the North Sea since it was born. So far, except for a few people, only a few people knew of its existence. In order to let the black tortoise meet the target requirements, Hongjun Tiandao deliberately suppressed the black tortoise's transformation. Since he could not transform, he could only walk on the path of the chaos demon god, like the laurel tree. The moon Osmanthus and the lunar star shared weal and woe. Although they had embarked on the path of the devil god, they were bound to the lunar star at the same time. They were bound together for good or bad. Black tortoise, on the other hand, had no restrictions at all. It could even replace its cultivation with sleeping, but its cultivation was increasing day by day. Compared to Sanqing and Fangqing Shan, it was even easier to break through to primordial chaos. There is no such thing as a free lunch. The reason for this was actually for today. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single day. Therefore, no matter what the black tortoise chooses, it cannot avoid being killed. Even if it was not for the sky-supporting pillar, Hongjun Tiandao would not allow the black tortoise to continue to grow. Firstly, they were afraid that they would not be able to escape. Secondly, only sages could exist in the desolation, not primordial chaos or demon gods. Otherwise, it would be the loss of Hongjun Tiandao's origin. The most important thing was that if a primordial chaos demon god died in the desolation, its power would return to heaven and earth. The benefits to Hongjun Tiandao would be unimaginable. Therefore, everything was predetermined a long time ago. Unless he had the combat power of the timeless arc or Yang Mei, or he could become their ally. However, this was obviously impossible. For the former, although Hongjun Tiandao intended to cultivate the black tortoise, it also knew that it would not be able to escape. Therefore, after reaching the primordial chaos and reaching the standard of sky supporting pillar, the improvement of the black tortoise was limited. At least, everything was under the control of Hongjun Tiandao. For the latter, if they wanted to form an alliance, they must at least bring benefits to each other. Otherwise, who would be willing to take risks with you and offend a powerful expert for you? However, the reason why Fangqing Shan could get Yang Mei's help was not only that they had a common enemy, but more importantly, Yang Mei valued Fangqing Shan's potential. This was a matter of investment and returns. Although the black tortoise was also a chaotic demon god, its potential was obviously not comparable to that of Fangqing Shan or the timeless Arkansas. More importantly, this sky-supporting pillar could be said to be a very important node. Hongjun would never allow any problems to occur on this. Therefore, unless Fangqing Shan and the others wanted to shed all pretense of cordiality with Hongjun, which obviously would not benefit anyone, they could only let it be. You still don't know that you are about to die. Since you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, then I will let you know how unwise it is to be the enemy of a saint in desolation. Tong Tian sneered. He knew that although his cultivation was good, and he had the 4 fairy slaying swords, the black tortoise's cultivation was not inferior to his. Its body's defensive power was not inferior to the primordial cardinal treasure. In order to end the battle quickly and avoid complications, Tong Tian directly added the power of Hongjun Tiandao and manipulated the 4 fairy slaying swords. Countless sword chi combined and turned into 4 beams of light. Then, they combined into a peerless killing sword that penetrated the sky and the earth. Endless evil chi spread, and the murderous intent was unstoppable. It could cut through the endless space. In an instant, it slashed towards the black tortoise. Seeing this scene, the black tortoise snorted coldly. He was quite confident in his defensive power. Just as he was about to open his mouth to mock, his expression suddenly changed. Because at this moment, the black tortoise suddenly found that it was imprisoned in the sky above the North Sea. Its strength was suppressed by more than 70%. To do this quietly and subtly, obviously only Hongjun Tiandao could do it. No! Accompanied by a shrill scream of the black tortoise, it was directly killed by Tong Tian's sword. Since the black tortoise was dead, no one knew what Tong Tian was thinking. He just cut off the black tortoise's 4 legs and took away the turtle shell, which was comparable to the primordial cardinal treasure. But the flesh and blood were casually thrown to the north. Unexpectedly, although the black tortoise was dead, its obsession did not dissipate. For a moment, its resentment was monstrous. The black tortoise was born at the beginning of the world. It might be the first creature in desolation. It never killed, never got involved in karma, and never left the North Sea. However, it did not expect to encounter such an undeserved disaster today. How could the resentment in its heart be small? What's more, the black tortoise was the first chaotic demon god to successfully cultivate after the world was opened. It was the first master of the origin realm to truly fall. For a time, the entire north was filled with foul air. Even saints and primordial chaos could not help but frown at the resentment. Even Rahu and the fiend cult could not wait to avoid this place, because once one was tainted by the resentment, it was very likely that one would become a weapon that only knew how to kill. Not to mention ordinary people, even those below the gold immortal realm who did not have extraordinary talent, would not be able to survive here. After all, this was the resentment or curse of a powerhouse of the origin realm. However, although the entire north was not suitable for ordinary people to live compared to supporting the sky, it obviously did not affect the overall situation. Moreover, it was only unsuitable for ordinary people to live. It was not like when Robe blew up the western ancestral vein and damaged the origin of Hongjun Tiandao. Therefore, everyone only paid a little attention to it and did not take it to heart. However, what they did not know was that Fang Qingshan was secretly planning to purify the entire north when he had the time. Not for Hongjun Tiandao, but for merit and luck. Chapter 1102. Although Black Tortoise's resentment was spread all over the north, it only occupied about 1/10 of Desolation's territory despite its vastness. It ultimately only affected a portion of people. Without the Sky Pillar, it affected the entire Desolation. Both parties had the lesser power. Coupled with the fact that it had nothing to do with them, it was the same for all living beings. Therefore, apart from being slightly surprised and feeling sorry for Black Tortoise and the North, everyone's attention was drawn to the strange phenomenon in the sky. With the restoration of the Sky Pillar, the witch and demon cultivation tribulation had finally come to an end. The evil chi had dissipated and the whole world was celebrating. For a moment, the sky was filled with rays of light and colorful cranes were chirping. Layers of clouds were dyed black and yellow. Hongjun Tiandao was moved by the sage's efforts to mend the sky, so it bestowed great merit. Among them, Nuwa and Tong Tian had contributed the most, so they naturally received the most merit, accounting for about 60% of all the merit. Each of them received 3 levels. However, Nuwa's efforts to mend the sky were immeasurable, so she naturally received all the merit. It had been a long time since Nuwa had become a sage, so her cultivation had long been consolidated. Therefore, this time, Nuwa directly absorbed the heaven-nourishing merit. Good heavens! Nuwa had originally been at the bottom of all the sages because of her merit and the fact that she had perished as a sage. However, this time, with the addition of merit, Nuwa's cultivation rose rapidly. Although it still did not help her completely control the law of creation, it only increased from 93 to 93. Nevertheless, her cultivation rose from early-stage primordial chaos to late-stage second-stage primordial chaos, catching up with Tong Tian and primordial chaos. Of course, this was only in terms of cultivation. In terms of battle prowess, Nuwa was no match for them. After all, she possessed the #1 offensive treasure in the Khanate world, the Pangu banner, and the immortal slaying sword formation, which could not be broken by the 4 sages. Even so, cultivation was still the foundation, and everything else was external. Therefore, Nuwa's rapid improvement still made everyone envious, jealous, and hateful. It must be known that it was extremely difficult to improve one's cultivation after becoming a sage. Other than Fang Qingshan, who possessed the timeless arc, most people could only rely on merit and luck to help a sage improve their cultivation quickly. This was also the reason why sages earn merit and luck, especially Junti. After all, the West still owed Hongjun Tiandao a lot of karma and merit. As for Tong Tian, although he had obtained the same amount of merit as Nuwa, it was reasonable to say that his cultivation should have been soaring. It would not have been a problem for him to catch up or even surpass Laozi. It was very likely that he would once again arouse primordial chaos hatred. Unfortunately, although he had obtained immeasurable merit, he had also killed the Black Tortoise at the same time, causing his resentment to fill the north and destroying 1/10 of Desolation's territory. Naturally, there was also a huge amount of karma. Therefore, when the merit descended, the first thing that was erased was the karma floating on his body. After these things were offset, more than half of the merit that Tong Tian had obtained was consumed. The remaining 4 levels of merit were Laozi's primordial chaos and Jieyin's 2 sages, each had half, occupying a total of 20%. After absorbing it, Laozi's cultivation improved slightly, while primordial chaos had a small breakthrough. Although Jieyin and Juni's cultivation did not break through, they felt relaxed. This was because the merit, like Tong Tian, had erased their karma. Without the restraints of the karma, the speed of their daily cultivation would greatly increase. Most importantly, they had repaid the karma of the heavens and were free from all worries. Therefore, even though their cultivation did not increase, the 2 of them still revealed looks of joy. As for the remaining 2 levels, half of it was given to the cauldron of heaven and earth. After all, the cauldron of heaven and earth played an important role in refining the heaven-mending stone. 1.5 levels were given to the pillar of heaven and earth, making the pillar of heaven and earth more compatible with heaven and earth. The last half level was given to the pillar of heaven and earth. For example, Zhen Yuanzi, Hong Yun, and the Queen Mother of the West. After the sky-mending stone was done, the cauldron of heaven and earth moved and flew back to the sea of blood. This time, nobody dared to stop it. After all, Nuo was a good example. For the cauldron of heaven and earth, she almost lost her life. This time, although everyone coveted the cauldron of heaven and earth, even Junti did not show any greed, let alone stop it. People should know their limits. They knew that they could not deal with Fang Qingshan. If they were not satisfied, they might end up in an awkward situation where they lost both their wealth and their lives. What they did not expect was that they did not covet Fang Qingshan's cauldron of heaven and earth, but Fang Qingshan was coveting the treasure in front of them. Spiritual treasures of heaven and earth belong to those who are fated and virtuous. Just as the cauldron of heaven and earth flew away, Fang Qingshan's voice was suddenly heard. I borrowed the cauldron of heaven and earth to mend the sky. It is a meritorious deed. The bell of chaos should be fated with me. As soon as he finished speaking, the cauldron of heaven and earth suddenly shone brightly. It instantly covered the bell of chaos, which had become ownerless due to Tai's death, and flew away with a swoosh. It was a surprise. No one expected Fang Qingshan to take advantage of the situation at this time. Furthermore, he was so greedy that he directly swallowed the bell of chaos. This scene did not only stun Sanqing and the others, but also Hong Jun, who was behind the scenes, clearly did not expect it either. So much so that he could not stop it in time. Damn it, why didn't I think of it? What a pity. That's the bell of chaos. There are few spiritual treasures in the entire desolation that can compare to it. When they came back to their senses, Sanqing and the others looked as if they had opened a dye house. On one hand, they were very angry that the bell of chaos had fallen into Fang Qingshan's hands. On the other hand, they were annoyed that they did not think of it in advance. They were really envious and jealous of it. In particular, the 2 people from the West were even more annoyed because they lacked treasures. However, although a lot of dissatisfaction flashed through their hearts, no one went to ask Fang Qingshan for it. That would only be asking for trouble. They might even have to bear the consequences when the time came. After all, Fang Qingshan and Blood Sea were taboo existences in everyone's hearts. Even Daozu had been defeated by him, let alone them. How could they let go of the duck that was already in their hands? There was no hope for the Bell of Chaos, but everyone had sharp eyes and quick hands for the remaining few treasures. Nuar rolled up the mountain river map and obtained the demon summoning banner. With this item, in addition to the death of the Demon Emperor, and Demon Empress, she was the rightful leader of the demon clan. The primeval Lord of Heaven took away half of Mount Buzhou. Later, he used this item to refine the acquired merit treasure, the Flipping Sky Seal, and gave it to Guang Qingzi. It shone brilliantly. Laozi rolled up the Taiji painting and took away the Wu Slang sword. The future of the human sovereign sword was finally settled. When Juni wanted to take action, there was nothing left. The two of them were naturally dissatisfied with the situation where everyone else was eating the meat while they didn't even get a mouthful of the soup. However, the treasures had their own owners, so they naturally couldn't ask them to hand them over. Thus, the two of them thought of something else. Chapter 11:03. To the west, they were truly poor and lacked everything. They lacked treasures, blessed lands, spiritual roots, spiritual energy, and talents. Now that they couldn't count on the numinous treasure, the only thing that could catch their attention on the entire battlefield was probably the human beings. Therefore, Xuandi rolled his eyes, and an idea came to his mind. He spoke to Nuwa in a righteous manner. Junior sister goddess Wa, although this cultivation tribulation has ended, it has caused the pillars of heaven to break, the firmament to be broken, and the living beings of all races to perish. The demon tribe is the main culprit. Although Emperor June and the others have died, the rest of the demon tribe has to pay the karma. In this case, let me bring them back to the Western Pure Land and enlighten them with the Dharma of Buddhism every day so that they can lay down their butcher's knife and become Buddhas. As soon as he spoke, without giving Nuwa time to react, Xuandi waved the tree of 7 wonders in his hand and swept away some of the remaining demons. Xuandi, how dare you? Seeing Xuanti's actions, Nuwa exploded in anger. After the great sorcerer and demon war, even though the demons had declined to 1/10 of their original numbers, they still had a saint like her. How dare Xuandi disregard his pride and take away the demons right in front of her? This was a complete slap to her face. He immediately took out the red embroidered ball with one hand and smashed it at Kundi's tree of 7 wonders. He shook out the mountain river map with the other hand and swept all the remaining demons away. Xuandi, hand over the children of the demons, or else I will fight you to the death. Nuwa said harshly. With the painting of stately painting in one hand and the red hydrangea in the other, the golden wheel of virtue hovered above her head. She looked like she was ready to fight. Fight to the death? Do you think the West is afraid of you? Kundi snorted coldly. Even if it was for the sake of the Western sect, he would not admit defeat, not to mention losing face. He immediately revealed his Bodhi golden body. With the tree of 7 wonders in one hand and the divine pestle in the other, he confronted goddess Nviwa. Although he wasn't a match for Nuwa, he wouldn't know until they fought. Moreover, his senior brother was there to guide him. Therefore, Xuandi didn't care about Nuwa's threat at all, just like how Fong Qingshan swept away the bell of chaos earlier. This was a duck that was already in his mouth. How could he let it fly away? Seeing that Sanqing and Nuwa were about to fight, Sanqing did not say anything. He stood on the side and watched the tigers fight. It was as if he was afraid that they wouldn't fight. During the last great Shaman-Demon War, Xuandi and Jie Yin formed an alliance with Nuwa. The threat to Sanqing's mystic gate skyrocketed. Now that they were having an internal conflict, Sanqing was naturally happy. Good. Daoist Xuandi is really bold. If you wanted to agree, sure. Nuwa didn't expect Xuandi to really fight with her. For a moment, she was riding a tiger and couldn't back down. Her face alternated between green and purple. If she didn't fight, she would lose face. If she fought, she would be the one to lose. She knew that Xuandi wasn't a match for her, but he had Jane. She couldn't even deal with Jane alone, let alone the two of them working together. Therefore, after a long while, Nuwa finally gave up on fighting. After all, if she lost in the end, not only would she lose the demon race, but she would also lose face. Therefore, she settled for the next best thing and stated a condition. Lady Nuwa coldly snorted and said, "Since you want to enlighten people, fine. In the great Shaman-Demon War, it takes 2 hands to clap. Other than the demon race, there is also the Wu people. If you are really so bold and compassionate, go and enlighten the Wu people as well. If you can do this, then the demon race has nothing to say. We will support your decision, and we will not regret it." Hearing Nuwa's words, Xuanti's face darkened. Asking them to enlighten the Wu people was not asking for trouble. It was asking for trouble. And the Wu people still had Ho Tuesday. She was the ruler of the underworld. Logically speaking, She was on equal footing with Hong Jun Tiandao. Most importantly, Ho2's strength was not something they could deal with. They were looking for a soft target. They didn't want to hit a rock with an egg. Therefore, how could they do such a thing? That's enough. Just as Nuwa was about to lose her temper and Sanqing was about to watch a good show, Jane spoke. How about this? Since Lady insists on getting these demons back, why don't we let these demons choose for themselves? Jane said unhurriedly. Okay. Hearing Jane's words, Nuwa agreed immediately. Firstly, she didn't want to fall out with Junie. After all, they might have to deal with Sanqing together in the future. Secondly, she was very confident in herself. In her opinion, after the death of Di Juntai, she would be the god of the demon race. Moreover, she was the saint of the demon race. The rest of the demon race would definitely choose her. Unfortunately, reality slapped her hard in the face. Now, in the Great Magi Demon War, both sides have suffered great losses. Demon emperors and demon emperors have fallen one after another. What are your plans from now on? Are you following me to Imperial Snail Palace? After Nuwa and Junti released all the remaining demon race members, Nuwa asked confidently. However, before she could finish, Junti continued. If you're willing, you can come to the West and join my Buddhist sect. You can live in eternal bliss, lay down your butcher's knife, and become a Buddha immediately. Before Nviwa could express her anger, Tongten, who was beside her, also spoke at this time. The West is but a poor place. If any demon race is willing to join the Jie school, I will teach them without discrimination. As soon as sect leader Tong Tian said this, everyone's expression changed except for Laozi, especially the primordial Lord of Heaven. In his eyes, other than Di Jun and a few others, the demon race was just a few people with hair, horns, and a wet life. On the other hand, the demon race was the authentic Pangu clan. He was already very dissatisfied with the disciples that Grandmaster Tong Tian had accepted. Now, Grandmaster Tong Tian wanted to accept these demon race members as his disciples. Fortunately, one should not wash one's dirty linen in public. In front of Nuwa and the others, Primordial Lord of Heaven did not want to embarrass Grandmaster Tong Tian, so he did not say anything. When the rest of the demon race heard sect leader Tong Tian's words, they were even more tempted. After all, Tong Tian was one of the 3 pure ones. Moreover, he had mastered the immortal slaying sword formation, which could not be broken by anyone who was not one of the 4 sages. He had a good background, a good cultivation base, a good treasure, and a good network. We are willing to be sect leader Tong Tian's disciples. Please accept us. Therefore, many demon saints turned to look at sect leader Tong Tian. Obviously, they had chosen the Jie school and were unwilling to stay in the demon race to suffer. The previous Great Magi Demon War had disappointed them greatly. Even the Demon Emperor Di Jun and the East Emperor Tai had fallen. What future did the demon race have? Although there was still Nuwa, she was a woman after all. Moreover, Nuwa did not often deal with the affairs of the demon race in the past. Was she going to join the Kuan Peng that had escaped? Chapter 1104. Good, ha ha ha. The Grandmaster of Heaven was overjoyed. With this group of people and the disciples he had taken in earlier, the prosperity of the Jie school was just around the corner. However, while he was happy, the expressions of the others did not look good. This was especially so for Junti. When he saw the Grandmaster of Heaven appear out of nowhere, his face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Fortunately, although the West was barren, there were 2 sages and there was still a market for them. Many people had the thought of being the head of chicken rather than the tail of the phoenix. Nuwa did not have Immortal Luya and the others. The Grandmaster of Heaven already had a group of disciples who had entered the sect earlier. In addition, there were too many experts who had just joined the Grandmaster of Heaven. If they joined the West, they would not gain much from it. It was better to join the West. At least, they would be valued more. Although the West lacked treasures and spiritual lands, there were 2 sages to learn from. In order to make the West prosper, they would definitely nurture them with all their might. Therefore, among the remaining people, a large number of people chose the West. This made Juni look much better. Although the number and quality of these people could not compare to the disciples who joined the Grandmaster of Heaven, it was better than nothing. Moreover, those who could survive the great sorcerer and demon war, regardless of their aptitude, at least had good luck and opportunities. They did not even lack pearls in the sea. Therefore, they did not reject anyone. As for the remaining people, not all of them joined Nuwa. Some were disheartened and prepared to live in seclusion in the north of the desolation. Seeing this scene, Nuwa almost went berserk. This was completely different from what she had imagined. The difference was too big. In the end, less than a quarter of the people chose her. How could she accept this? Good. I hope you won't regret it in the future. Nuwa said harshly, but there was nothing she could do. After all, she had agreed to let them choose. She did not expect this outcome. Just like that, the huge demon clan disintegrated overnight and turned into 4 groups. One group joined the Buddhist sects, another joined the Jia sect, one followed Lady Nuwa, and the last group went to the North Continent, which was a land of bitter cold. They completely became itinerant cultivators. As for the Wu people, they were unwilling to accept the Wu people, not to mention that Hutu, a powerful cultivator whom they could not afford to offend, was there. After all, they were the authentic Pangu people. The most important thing was that they had no primordial spirit and were infected by the evil chi. What was the use of accepting them? If that was the case, wouldn't he be constantly causing trouble for himself? Therefore, as long as these Wu people did not continue to stay in the Desolation Center and did not continue to occupy the leading role, they would completely ignore their existence. Huda did not want any more Wu people to be harmed. Therefore, she brought a portion of them to the Netherworld to help her manage the Reincarnation Center. Another portion was sent to the north. Although the conditions there were harsh, it was the most suitable place for the Wu people. The Demon Clan is immoral. They stole the deity position and caused the desolation of the world. All living beings died. Therefore, the heavenly court should be handed over. Nuwa did not expect them to not only have designs on the Demon Clan's population, but they also wanted to snatch the foundation of the Demon Clan, the heavenly court, the stars in the sky, and the heavenly cycle star formation, the foundation of the Demon Clan. The starfruit tree had mysteriously disappeared after the great sorcerer and demon war. It was unknown whether someone had stolen it or whether it was a backup plan left behind by Tai Dijun. Without the starfruit tree and the bell of chaos, the star banner had self-destructed. If they lost the Jotian star, then the Demon Clan's protective array and the 3 ultimate formations of the desolation would probably be destroyed. They should be punished. Lady Nuwa's expression changed once again when she heard Taishang Laojuan's words. What she was most worried about had happened. Sure enough, the Yao race was like a piece of fatty meat that was easily obtainable. Everyone wanted to take a bite out of it, and they wouldn't stop until they took the last bite. Eldest brother, aren't you a little too greedy? You just divided the Demon Clan, and now you want to occupy the heavenly court. Do you really think I'm a pushover? Laozi did not care about Nuwa's anger. He said calmly, Junior sister Nuwa, it's not that we're greedy. We're just speaking the truth. You should know that Daozu of Hongjun Tiandao has previously banned saints from participating in the war. Now that the heavenly pillar has been broken, the world is no longer the same as before. Haven't you noticed that even the innate spiritual energy has begun to transform into acquired spiritual energy? Yes, the great sorcerer and demon war had not only interrupted Mount Buzhou and pierced through the heavens, but the most important change was the end of the ancient era. The innate spiritual energy had begun to transform into acquired spiritual energy, just like how the chaotic spiritual energy had transformed into innate spiritual energy during the Beast Tribulation. From then on, except for the saints' Taoist sites, the innate spiritual energy in all the blessed paradises would completely disappear, and all kinds of heavenly treasures would decrease sharply. After a pause, Laozi continued. Under such circumstances, I'm afraid that Daozu will not allow the mixed essence saint's combat power to be displayed in the desolation. Once you can't take action, do you think that the remaining people of the Demon Clan will be able to occupy the heavenly court without any worries? An innocent man will get into trouble because of his wealth. I'm doing this for the good of the demon clan. You have to think this through. You have to know that the world is bustling for benefits, and some people are willing to do anything for benefits. Without your deterrence, once the demon clan dares to continue to seize the heavenly court, I'm afraid that under the backlash of luck, the demon clan will be overturned. Upon hearing Laozi's words, Niwa was speechless. He knew that Laozi's words were not just a threat, but a fact. After all, a tall tree attracts the wind. When the demon clan was at its peak, only Wu people were worthy of his attention and could be his enemy. However, once the demon clan declined, the races that were once suppressed by the demon clan would take advantage of the situation to retaliate. After all, the opportunity could not be missed. When the demon clan unified the thousands of races in the desolation, apart from a small number of people who voluntarily surrendered because they saw the bright future of the demon clan, most of them were coerced and lured by the demon clan. Many of them were even slaughtered because of their stubbornness. For a moment, Niwa could not help but feel mentally and physically exhausted. One tree cannot make a forest, and one tree cannot support a forest. Think about the West. There were Jie-in and Juani, and Kunlun had the three Sanqing brothers. She was the only one who could protect her. In the past, she had an elder brother who could protect her. However, Fushi did not have the combat power of a saint or primordial chaos immortal and could no longer protect her. In this great Magi-demon war, if not for her, Fushi would probably have followed in the footsteps of Dijuntai. Although her cultivation level had increased, there was still a certain gap between her and Jane, not to mention the supreme treasure in her hands. More importantly, she had previously let the demons choose for themselves, and the decision of the demons made her feel bitterly disappointed. Moreover, apart from the demon clan, she did have other choices. After all, she was the holy mother of the human clan, and the human clan would be the protagonist of the world next. Chapter 1105. The demons had hurt Niwa's heart, and she had a better choice. Most importantly, Niwa knew that this was the general trend. Sanqing and the rest, and even Daozu, would not allow the demons to continue occupying the heavenly courts or even revive. Only a weak demon race could satisfy the interests of all parties. Otherwise, it would really be a disaster, not a blessing, as Laozi had said. Back then, for the great Magi-demon war, the sages could work together to conceal the heavenly secrets, and Juanti could personally plot against the 10 golden crows. If the demons still wanted to revive, or even occupy the nest of the doves, Juanti would probably not be the only one who would have to fight. In order to preserve the strength of the demon clan, and most importantly, she did not continue to struggle because she knew that it was difficult for her 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. However, there were too many monks and not enough meat. The items of the demon race were not that easy to obtain. Just now, Sanqing sat on the mountain and watched as Juanti coveted the children of the demons. Now, she wanted to see if they could still sit still in the face of the heavenly courts and the position of the celestial emperor. However, Niwa asked expressionlessly, "There's no problem with handing over the heavenly courts, but who? Who will take over the position of the celestial emperor? It's not a problem to hand over the heavenly courts, but to whom? My disciple, Guang Chengzi, has a noble background. He is the manifestation of the Khanate purple yang qi. He has great opportunities, great luck, and great perseverance. He is worthy of the position." As soon as Niwa finished speaking, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning continued. "Guang Chengzi?" Niwa smiled. "What virtue does he have? Is his cultivation strong enough to suppress the world, or is he meritorious?" "You." The heavenly lord of primordial beginning was furious when he heard that. Just as he was about to refute, he suddenly saw a ray of light descending from the 9 heavens and stopping in front of everyone. A fair-skinned boy with bright eyebrows and white teeth appeared. Haotian greets the sages. May the sages live forever. This person was Hongjuan's personal attendant, Haotian. At this moment, he was just a boy by Hongjuan's side, similar to the golden horn and silver horn by Laozi's side, the white crane by primordial lord's side, and the water and fire by Tongtian's side. He was still not the Jade Emperor who would rule the heavenly court in the future, the Lord of heaven and earth, the supremacy of desolation, but a puppet in the hands of the sages. Greetings, junior brother. Why have you come to us instead of serving Daozu in the Purple Cloud Palace? Hao Yan was representing Hong Jun at the moment. Therefore, everyone slightly leaned to one side and bowed to Hao Yan. They even called Hao Yan junior brother. Then they asked, I'll let all of you know that I'm here to pass on Daozu's verbal order and invite all of you to come to the Purple Cloud Palace. Hao Yan said methodically, as Daozu commands. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know why Hong Jun was looking for them at this time, but they didn't dare to be negligent. Since Daozu has summoned us, let's not keep Master waiting. Let's go now. As the first disciple, Laozi immediately made the decision. Good. The others naturally didn't have any objections and nodded in unison. In an instant, all the sages turned into conveying lights and flew into the chaos outside the 33 heavens. With the speed of the sages, it didn't take long for them to pass through the chaos and arrive at the Purple Cloud Palace. Not long after, to show their respect for Hong Jun, everyone stopped outside the Purple Cloud Palace and walked over quickly. The Purple Cloud Palace was still the same Purple Cloud Palace. There weren't many changes, except that it looked more ancient and more natural. If it wasn't for the Purple Cloud Palace suppressing the chaos and standing tall like a pillar, one would think that it was an ordinary stone house. All of you come in. As Sanqing and the others approached, the Purple Cloud Palace's originally tightly shut door slowly opened. Disciple Laozi, primordial lord of origin, Tongtian, Nuwa, Jin, Zhuanti greets Daozu. Laozi and the others entered one after another and arrived at the place where the Purple Cloud Palace's teachings were held. At the same time, they bowed to the high platform. In an instant, Hong Jun's figure materialized on the high platform. It was as if he had been waiting there for a long time. No one could tell that he was there. Hong Jun himself didn't reveal any aura at all. He was like an old man without any cultivation. They even subconsciously ignored his existence. Seeing this, the sages couldn't help but sigh. Daozu was getting more and more mysterious. The little thought in his mind was immediately thrown out of his mind, and his expression became even more respectful. All right, dispense with the formalities. Hong Jun ancestor seemed to be unaware of the complicated feelings of the crowd. Without any expression on his face, he nodded lightly and raised his hand slightly. An invisible force made the sages unable to resist, and they involuntarily stood up. Then he said calmly, Hong Jun ancestor, ancestor Hong Jun ancestor. There are tribulations in the world to eliminate evil aura. The ferocious beasts of the first cataclysm, the dragons and phoenixes that followed, and now, the sorcerers and demons are all the same. The sorcerers and demons were born from the destiny of the world. After going through the cataclysm, they have declined. Their good fortune has been exhausted, and their karma is too deep. Although the two sages, Nuwa and Hutu, are still around, they can no longer control the desolation of the world. From now on, they will be exiled to the North Continent and are not allowed to go anywhere else if there's nothing important. Today, Jun is dead, but the heavenly court can't be abandoned. After all, a family can't be without a leader, and a country can't be without a ruler. In order to maintain the stability of the three realms, the position of the heavenly emperor needs to be established as soon as possible. At this point, Hong Jun paused, looked around at the sages, and asked, Do any of you have a suitable candidate? Master, my disciple, Luya, is the most suitable candidate. As soon as Hong Jun finished speaking, Nuwa spoke up eagerly. Although she knew that the chances were slim and had already given up, Nuwa still decided to struggle a little more. She would do her best and leave it to fate. Luya is the son of Jun, the crown prince of the demon race. He's the most suitable candidate to inherit his father's position. The heavenly court is the heavenly court of desolation, not the heavenly court of the demon race. It's just nonsense for a son to inherit his father's position. The primordial Lord of Heaven snorted coldly. That's right. Putting aside the fact that Luya caused the 10 days of desolation and caused the lives of the people to be plunged into misery and suffering, the fact that he's the son of Dijun means that he can assume the position of the Heavenly Emperor. Zhuanti echoed, what's going on with the 10 days of desolation? Don't you know it yourself? Nua's face turned cold when she thought of how Zhuanti disregarded the pride of the saints to deal with the 10 golden crows, which led to the series of events that followed. Unfortunately, Zhuanti's skin had already been tempered to be indestructible, and he was completely indifferent. Master, my disciple Duo Bao, has great perseverance, great opportunities, great fortune, and a good character. He's worthy of this position. Just as Juni was entangled with Jiayin, Tong Tian took the opportunity to push his eldest disciple, Duo Bao, forward. Although the saints were unwilling to let their disciples join the heavenly court to assume the position of a deity, it was because of the karma entanglement of the heavenly court, which was not conducive to cultivation. The most important thing was that the saints could not afford to send their disciples to be subordinates. However, if it was the position of the heavenly emperor, they could still fight for it. One was the master, and the other was the subordinate. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. Moreover, the position of the heavenly emperor was high and powerful. Regardless of cultivation and combat power, his status was not inferior to the saints. Most importantly, although the heavenly court was entangled with karma, it was also favored by destiny. Chapter 1106. When the time comes, heaven and earth will help. In desolation, merit and fate occupied a very important position. Ordinary cultivators, mighty figures, saints, and even Hongjun, all of them flocked to the power of providence and merit. Because after reaching the origin realm, if one wanted to improve their cultivation, the speed was as slow as a tortoise's. The only way to improve quickly was to add fate and merit to one's body. Merit was good, but it was not easy to get. Apart from Yuwa, who created humans to mend the sky, and Hudu, who created Samsara, the amount of merit in desolation could be counted on one's hands. Merit was not easy to get, but fate was much easier to get. Because no matter if you gathered a group of people, established a force, obtained some treasure, or obtained a karmic rank, fate would be inclined to you. As the most important karmic rank in desolation, the Celestial Emperor was in charge of 33 heavens and ruled over the land of desolation in the netherworld. He was in charge of gods, immortals, Buddhas, demons, ghosts, and all living creatures. He had boundless power and was known as the sacred Lord of Firmament and the King of all heavens. Even sages coveted the fate that gathered on him. As long as there was no big trouble during his reign, it would definitely be of great benefit to cultivation. If it was not for the fact that sages could not obtain the Celestial Emperor karmic rank, plus the entanglement of karma, such a good thing would not have fallen into the hands of his disciples. Therefore, as soon as the Grand Master of Heaven spoke, everyone pushed out their disciples one after another. Master, my disciple Guangchengzi has great wisdom and perseverance. He could be the Celestial Emperor. This was Primordial Lord. Although he had 12 golden immortals, as well as people of good fortune like the South Pole Immortal Hermit and Yin Zhongzi, Primordial Lord still loved Guangchengzi the most. After all, this was his first disciple, which meant something. Therefore, whether it was the current Celestial Emperor, the future teacher of the human sovereign, or even the flipping sky seal, Primordial Lord of Heaven left all the good things to him. This was probably also an important reason why Si Hang and the others left the sect after the War of Deification. A bowl of water could not be balanced. Contradictions and cracks had already appeared. Master, my disciple Mithra Buddha, also has great wisdom and perseverance. He can take on the heavy responsibility of the Celestial Emperor. This was Zhuandi. The only one who did not speak was Laozi. He only had the great Master Xiandu as his disciple. Although the position of the Celestial Emperor was not bad, it was not good for cultivation due to the entanglement of karma. Therefore, he did not recommend him. At the same time, He was even more clear that no matter which family held the important position of Sky Emperor, it would destroy the balance of desolation. And this was the most important point in Hongjun. If there really was a force that broke the balance, the final result would probably be a blessing, not a curse. Just like when the demon clan had just risen, Hongjun was prepared to support Tung Wang Kung to fight against the demon clan. Although Daozu had given up on Tung Wang Kung in the end, Wu people had fallen into the trap. Therefore, the position of the Heaven Ruler was not something that could be decided by the saints. Everything depended on the decision of Daozu of Hongjun. The question before was merely a test and could not be taken seriously. As expected, seeing that no one had a unified answer, Hongjun could not help but speak. All right, since you can't recommend a good candidate, then I will make the decision. How about it? Yes, Daozu's command. Hearing Hongjun's words, Tong Tian, Zhuanti, and the others could not help but look at each other. They secretly rolled their eyes and came back to their senses. Since you've already said so, would they dare to have any other opinions? Therefore, the three of them answered in unison. Laozi revealed an expression that said it was as expected. Jean secretly sighed. Nuwa, on the other hand, had a mocking smile on her face. Let's let you fight, but in the end, it will all be for naught. Hao Yin Yaoqi, you have followed me for so many years. Even if you have not made any contributions, you have worked hard. The important heavenly court will be handed over to you in the future. Hao Yin will be the celestial emperor, and Yaoqi will be the queen mother. I hope that you will not let us down and work hard. Do not follow in the footsteps of the demon clan. Hao Yin will be the heaven ruler. Hongjun did not care about what the others thought and spoke according to his plan. Thank you, Daozu. Hao Yin and Yaoqi clearly did not think that there would be such a thing as a free lunch. For a moment, they were stunned. When they came back to their senses, they hurriedly knelt down to express their gratitude. Their voices were slightly trembling. As Hongju and Tongzi, they were seventh-rank officials in front of the Prime Minister's door. Even the sages had to give them some face. After all, they had to give face to the Buddha. However, they were still Tongzi and slaves. On the surface, people respected them, but they only respected the backer behind them. Most importantly, they had no freedom. Riches and honor did not return home. It was like wearing silk clothes at night. Fame and wealth were a curse that no one could escape. It was the same for cultivation, not only for longevity, but also for fame. Hao Yin, who had cultivated to the current level, naturally had his own ideas. He wanted to go out and make a living. He wanted to be in a high position and be worshipped by others. Most importantly, the heaven ruler was of great significance. He was the master of the whole world. To a certain extent, even the karmic rank of the saints could not be compared to the heaven ruler. Therefore, when such a good thing suddenly fell on their heads, Hao Yin and Yaoqi almost fainted. Yes, Hongju nodded slightly and then took out a few things. You too control the heavenly court, so you must have precious treasures to protect your fate. As he spoke, Hongjun took out a mirror and handed it to Hongjun Tiandao. This mirror can be called the Hao Yin mirror. It has the same name as you, so it can be considered that you are destined to see the 9 heavens and 10 realms. It is a top-level, primordial spiritual treasure with endless magical effects. Today, I will give it to you to protect yourself. Hao Yin was overjoyed and took it with thanks. Turning around, Hongjun said to Jade Pool, "This is a top-level primordial spiritual treasure, the Immortal Gathering Bell. This is a top-grade connate spiritual treasure, the Immortal Assembling Bell. Its defense is unparalleled, and its attack isn't weak either. At the same time, when this bell rings, it can gather a horde of immortals. As for this top-grade connate spiritual root, the Great Radiance Tree, not only can it stabilize one's karmic luck, it can also be used to groom and recruit disciples. Originally, Hongjun should have given Jade Pool the white cloud flag of the primordial 5 flags and the peach tree of the 5 elements, one of the 10 top-level primordial spiritual roots. However, these 2 items had fallen into the hands of Fong Qingshan. Therefore, Hongjun could only take out 2 other spiritual treasures. Compared to the white cloud flag and the peach tree of immortality, these two spiritual treasures were slightly inferior. However, they were still top-level spiritual treasures. With the Great Light Tree, the heavenly court could continuously cultivate its own forces and gather a powerful force in the shortest time possible. Jade Poole was not clear about this, but she knew how precious the items in her hands were. Did she not see sparks of jealousy in the eyes of the saints, especially Junti? Just like Hao Ian, she accepted the spiritual treasures happily and caressed them. All right, the rest of the matter is up to you guys to discuss. After arranging the general direction, Hongjuan's Daozu sent the saints, Hao Ian, and Jade Poole back to the Desolation Hall. Chapter 1107. There are many things to be done in the Heavenly Court. Please help us, senior brothers. After the initial excitement, Hao Ian could not help but be dumbfounded and disappointed when he saw the broken Heavenly Court. He could only ask Laozi and the others for help. Although they looked down on Hao Ian, it was Hongjun Daozu's orders after all. They could not completely ignore it. Moreover, the Heavenly Court was the center of desolation. It would be ridiculous if it was broken. Therefore, several saints worked together and used the power of Hongjun Tiandao to repair the Heavenly Court and restore it to its former glory. Of course, this glory could not be compared to the Heavenly Court in Di Jun's era. After all, the shamans and demons had retreated in defeat, just like how the dragons and phoenixes had retreated in the past. Basically, everything that could be taken from them had been taken from them. The Heavenly Court was no exception. The reason why the entire Heavenly Court appeared to be in ruins was not only because of the great shaman-demon war, but also because of the 1 meter higher skies looting. All right, I'll leave another clone to help the Jade Emperor. This was Laozi. He was the senior brother of the Celestial Sect and naturally had to take the lead. However, he only had one Master Xin. Du Tung Wang Kung's primordial spirit had just reincarnated, and the human race had not yet flourished. Therefore, he did not have any extra subordinates. After some thought, he sent his clone, Taishang Laozi, to refine pills in the Tishita Palace. My disciple, the old man of the South Pole, is one of the 6 royals, the Longevity Emperor. Laozi expressed his stance. Primordial Lord of the Primordial World followed suit and sent a disciple. It was not a direct disciple like the 12 Golden Immortals. Moreover, it was one of the 6 royals who was as famous as the Celestial Emperor. With the pride of the Primordial Lord of the Primordial World, he was naturally not willing to let his disciple be inferior to others, especially Hao Ian. Thus, he set up the 6 imperial sovereigns to distribute power. The 6 imperial sovereigns were the Jade Emperor, the North Star Upper Palace Heavenly Sovereign, the Middle Heaven North Pole Purple Tenuity Emperor, the East Pole Green Splendor Emperor, the South Pole Longevity Emperor, and the Sky-Bearing Emulation Earth Empress. Although the Jade Emperor was the leader, the others were not weak either, especially the Earth Emulation Emperor. That was the position of the Earth Emulation Emperor, and no one dared to covet it. My disciples, Zhuani was about to speak and send Xidagarba, Methria, and the others from his sect over. Not to mention the important positions of the 6 royals, but they could also intervene. This would lay the foundation for the West to enter the East in the future and for Buddhism to spread to the East. Moreover, the Heavenly Court had providence, which could assist in cultivation. For the impoverished West, this was not an opportunity they could miss. As for the karmic entanglement of the Heavenly Court, it was not a big deal for the West. After all, this was what the Buddhist sect was best at. They could even cultivate the power of faith. Xidagarba even made a great wish that he would not become a Buddha if hell was not empty. Could hell be empty? Therefore, since he wasn't afraid of this, he naturally wasn't afraid of karma either. Unfortunately, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Sanqing had long considered the Celestial Court to be the Celestial Court of Xianmen. Naturally, they would not allow the 2 from the West to interfere. After all, the cake was only so big. If one more person shared the cake, they would lose a portion of the profit. Therefore, Laozi and the others were already on guard against them. This is the Celestial Court of the East. The Taoist is in the West. It's better to mind your own business." As he spoke, Sanqing's aura erupted at the same time. They each took out their own treasures and locked onto Junie. It seemed that if they didn't agree, they would fight. Seeing this, Junti's anger was indescribable. Unfortunately, he had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. After all, in terms of backing, background, providence, merit cultivation, magical powers, and treasures, they were inferior to the other party in all aspects. "My skills are inferior, so there's nothing I can do." Junti sighed in his heart. "Forget it. The West still has a lot of things to deal with. I'll leave first." As he spoke, Junti pulled the indignant Junti and turned to leave without any hesitation. Actually, he wasn't lying. After all, they had just received a batch of demons and hadn't had time to digest them. Of course, the real situation depended on the benevolent and the wise. However, there was still a fig leaf. Your Majesty is the candidate chosen by the Daozu to be the Celestial Emperor. Naturally, your ability is unquestionable. We trust you very much. We'll leave the rest to you. I hope you won't let the Daozu down." After Junti and Junie left, Sanqing gave Hao Ian and Jade-Pool a look that said, "I have faith in you." Then, he turned to leave without hesitation. As for Nuwa, she naturally didn't want to see others divide the demon race's celestial court in front of her. Therefore, she left this sad place immediately. Looking at the empty celestial court in front of them, Hao Ian and Jade-Pool wanted to cry, but had no tears. The celestial court had just been established. Hao Ian had wanted to discuss it with the sages. He wanted them to help him on account of Hongjun and send some disciples to assist him. After all, the celestial court had long been destroyed because of the great sorcerer and demon war. More importantly, apart from the two of them, he didn't have any subordinates. The demons were either taken away by the Jie school in the west or brought into the palace by Nuwa. The rest were all sent to the North Continent, a place that was hated by all. In addition, they had been with Hongjun for many years and were not very familiar with desolation. Even if they wanted to recruit people, they didn't know where to start. Most importantly, they had the title of the Celestial Emperor and the Heavenly Mother. Even the sages didn't help. The others either wanted to wait for the right price or just wait and see. Therefore, they pinned their hopes on the sages. They hoped that they would help them on account of Hongjun and the Purple Cloud Palace. Unfortunately, they thought too much. The result was very different from what they had imagined. At this moment, Hao Ian was filled with regret. If they had known this would happen, they definitely wouldn't have asked in the first place. Now, they were suffering the consequences of their own actions. They didn't have anyone to help them, but they had the old Lord Taishang and the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor above them. As for the one who really wanted to help, Junie, he was stopped by Sanqing. They were really occupying the manger, but didn't shit. They weren't willing to help the Celestial Court and didn't allow the West to join them. They were really overbearing. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in life. Although they could reverse time and space, they clearly didn't have that ability. Not to mention them, Di Jiang, the Candle Dragon, and even Yang Mei probably couldn't do it. Seeing this, Hao Ian was very indignant. However, Laozi and the others completely ignored him. If it wasn't for Hongjun, they would have taught him a lesson if he dared to be rude to them. Just read the script. We'll see. Hao Ian thought to himself while gritting his teeth. At this moment, he was probably sowing the seeds of disaster for the investiture of the gods' war in the future. Good fella. Not only did he not help, he even dared to make things difficult for him. Not to mention Hao Ian, even a clay figurine would have some anger. Chapter 1108. There was a cause and effect for everything. It was precisely because the three pure ones and the others looked down on Hao Ian that even their disciples looked down on Hao Ian. Hao Ian could tolerate it if you said you were a sage. After all, although he was a celestial emperor, he was no match for a sage. Except for Hongjun Tiandao Daozu, sages were the real players in the game of desolation. Those who were not sages were non-entities, including the celestial emperor. So what if he was Di Jun, let alone Hao Ian? He still had the Zhodian star formation, which was a peerless formation that could arm wrestle with a sage. However, the disciples of a sage also looked down on him. How could he tolerate it? How could Guang Chengzi and the others compare to him? In terms of cultivation, Hao Yan was a top-notch existence below the sages. Even if he was not as good as Zenyuanzi, Kuanpeng, and the others, he was not far behind. Moreover, he had just ascended the throne. After that, he would probably surpass them. In terms of status, Hao Yan was a disciple of Hongjun, which was equivalent to half a disciple. In terms of birth, except for Sanqing, even Junti and Nuwa might not be more noble than him. No one would feel comfortable being treated like this. You treat me like a national scholar, and I will repay you like a national scholar. You treat me like grass, and I treat you like an enemy. It was all reciprocal. You reap what you sow. It would have been fine if it had happened once or twice, but it had happened 3 to 5 times, or even 8 to 10 times. If it had been like this for a long time, it was no wonder that Hao Yan Purple Cloud Palace would have complained. Let's go in first. No matter what, he had to accept the truth. Life was like a rape. Since he couldn't resist, he had to accept it. Since they could not resist, they could only enjoy it. After taking a breath, Hao Yan called out to Yao Qi and walked toward the soaring heaven palace. This would be their base camp, their home in the future. Just as Hao Yan and Yao Qi entered the heavenly court and were about to go to the soaring heaven palace, they suddenly realized something was wrong. After walking for a long time, not only did they not reach the soaring heaven palace, but the scene in front of them seemed to be no longer in the heavenly court. At the same time, the mysteries of heaven were in chaos. What's going on? Could it be that something big has happened? Damn it. One wave has just subsided, and another wave has arisen. I wonder what's going to happen this time. I hope it won't be too much trouble. Most cultivators were very sensitive to the changes in the heavenly secrets. Therefore, at this moment, heaven's mystery suddenly became hazy as if a great trial was about to begin. Naturally, this was something that shocked everyone. Even sages, primordial chaos, and Hongjun did not dare to let their guard down. Hao Yan and Jade Poole naturally did not know about this situation. At this moment, they were worried about their own situation. To know that the two of them were guests of the Purple Cloud Palace and had been by Daozu and Hongjuan's side for many years. Though they did not receive special treatment, under the influence of Hongjun, they learned a lot. Though they were not as strong as Dijun and Tai, they were not to be underestimated. Their capabilities were even stronger than the 10 demon marshals. Compared to Kuanpeng and Zenyuanzi, they were only slightly weaker. After all, though they were children, their backgrounds were no worse than Zenyuanzi and the others. Usually, when they stayed by Hongjuan's side, they had nothing to do and could only cultivate to kill time. Therefore, they were at the peak of the intermediate stage of the Sage Realm and were one step away from the advanced stage of the Sage Realm. However, the situation right now was that someone had moved them to a completely foreign place without them even realizing it. This was unheard of. The two of them quickly took out the Supreme Sky Mirror and the immortal gathering bell that they had just barely refined. They attempted to resist, but realized that it was useless. At this moment, they could not even use their spiritual power or primordial spirit, let alone their spiritual treasures. The two of them were like mortals who had no power to resist and could only passively accept the time shift. The hare leaped and the falcon swooped down in a flash. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but it actually happened in just a moment. Then, Hao Yan and Jade Poole saw a person whom they absolutely did not want to see smiling at them. Who else could this person be but Feng Qingshan? At the last moment of the great war of sorcery and demon, when Mount Buzhou fell, Feng Qingshan woke up from his closed-door cultivation. On one hand, this period of closed-door cultivation had been successful and his cultivation had improved greatly. On the other hand, he had been awakened by a shock. After all, the world was in turmoil and the Blood Sea was the first to bear the brunt. Therefore, when Huta borrowed the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth from him, he was able to be so fast and take the Bell of Chaos away before Hongjun. As for the Bell of Chaos, Hongjun did not make a big fuss because Feng Qingshan had taken it away. Although this item was related to a major event in the future, it was not of much use at this moment. Even if Fang Qingshan did not take it away, he would have taken it away. It was just that he was a little unhappy that it had fallen into the hands of the enemy. Although the Bell of Chaos was a top primordial cardinal treasure, at Hong Jun's level, unless the 3 heaven-opening treasures were combined into one, it would not be of much use. It would not be of much use in a battle. Therefore, even if Fang Qingshan had taken it away, Hong Jun had no intention of taking it back. More importantly, he had already put Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei on the death list. Sooner or later, he would deal with them. After all, Fang Qingshan had caused his death last time, which was a great humiliation. Therefore, he temporarily kept the Bell of Chaos with Fang Qingshan. Putting that aside, this time, the reason why Fang Qingshan brought Hao Yian and Jade Pool to the Blood Sea was self-evident. The Hao Yian mirror. Yes, Fang Qingshan's goal was the Hao Yian mirror that Hao Yian had just obtained. When he was choosing supreme treasures in the Wu People's secret vault, he did not achieve his goal because the reincarnation demon's item was not satisfactory. Fang Qingshan had a flash of inspiration and thought of the famous 3 mirrors in the Desolation sect. It was the reincarnation mirror in the hands of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, the head of the 4 great bodhisattvas of Buddhism, who swore not to become a Buddha until hell was empty. Because of this mirror, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva thrived in the reincarnation underworld and even suppressed the Blood Sea Styx. As for the mirror, Fang Qingshan was almost 100% sure that it was transformed from the fragment of the reincarnation demons accompanying Supreme Treasure. The Kunlun mirror in the hands of the Queen Mother of West Kunlun was known as the Treasure of Time. It could travel through the past and the future, allowing one to see through the ages. And the Jade Emperor, the Hao Yian mirror in the hands of Hao Yian, was known as the Supreme Treasure of Space. It could shine in all directions. However, Fang Qingshan was not so sure about the last 2 mirrors. He was just speculating. After all, legend had it that if one could gather these 3 mirrors, they could be combined like the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man, the Khanate 5-direction flags, and the 4 lights of heaven. Since they could do that, they must be of the same origin. Therefore, Fang Qingshan guessed that these 3 mirrors might be transformed from the fragments of the reincarnation demon's reincarnation mirror. Chapter 1109. In the Wu People's secret vault, Fang Qingshan not only obtained the flesh and blood of the reincarnation demon god, Dharma, and spirit treasures, but also the immortal crystal, a divine object that could refine immortal substances, the wishing pool of chaos spirit treasure, the lifeless demon god's essence blood, and almost all the treasures of heaven and earth, as well as the origin power of the Dharma of spirit treasures. The World Tree Doppelganger also obtained the World Tree and Mosquito. Daoran also cultivated the Green Lotus of Fate to the 12th grade, as well as the 12th grade Pure White Lotus. After obtaining so many good things, it would be too wasteful to put them away. Therefore, Fang Qingshan was eager to digest them and turn them into his own strength. So he went into seclusion with Mosquito Daoran and the World Tree Doppelganger, and did not immediately go to find the 3 mirrors. Later, because of the great war of sorcerers and demons, he was delayed. Of course, the most important thing was that the Hao Tian mirror was in Hong Juan's hands at that time, and he could not take it away. As for the idea of exchanging, Fang Qingshan did not even think about it. Thinking about it, Hong Jun had extorted a small sum of money from him in exchange for the fairy slaying sword and the Mountain River map from him. If it were Hong Jun, he would probably win. Not to mention that if Hong Jun knew that he needed the Hao Tian mirror and took the initiative, he would put forward harsh conditions. The biggest possibility was that he would refuse to trade with him. From then on, this treasure would be completely hidden by him and be shelved. Therefore, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Fang Qingshan did not even look for the Kunlun mirror and the reincarnation mirror. In order to avoid trouble, after Hao Tian was born, Fang Qingshan immediately got him here. Originally, Fang Qingshan was very sure that the reincarnation mirror was a fragment of the reincarnation demon god's spiritual treasure. After all, whether it was Ksitigarbha or the reincarnation mirror, he could see the relationship between this treasure and the great way of reincarnation. However, it was all his speculation, and he still had to see the real thing. Reincarnation mirror was already like this, not to mention Hao Yin mirror and Kunlun mirror. However, as he captured Hao Yin from the heavenly court, Fang Qingshan finally confirmed that this treasure was indeed a fragment of the reincarnation mirror. Because inside his body, the primordial supreme treasure, the samsara mirror, which was the main body of the reincarnation demon god spiritual treasure, was trembling as if it couldn't wait to fly out and devour the Hao Yin mirror in Hao Yin's hand. The Hao Yin mirror in Hao Yin's hand was also trembling, but the trembling was different. The former was excitement, while the latter was worry and fear, just like Hao Yin had met Fang Qingshan. It was like a bronze meeting a king, or a ninth-rank officer meeting an emperor. Therefore, he was in a good mood. However, while he was in a good mood, Hao Yin and Yu Yang were in a terrible mood that could not be described with words. After all, they were Hongjuan's children. Fang Qingshan and Hongjuan's relationship wasn't exactly good. Naturally, they knew everything about Fang Qingshan. Even Hongjun was afraid of him. Because of him, they had suffered a great loss. Naturally, they were even more afraid of him. More importantly, Hao Yin realized that the Hao Yin mirror in his hand was emitting waves of fear. If he didn't try his best to control it, it would have escaped by now. Could it be that even the spiritual treasure feels threatened? Hao Yin and Yu Yang were crying in their hearts. They didn't know why Fang Qingshan captured them, didn't know what he was plotting, and didn't know what kind of danger they were about to face. Could it be that he wanted to use them to attack Dao Zhu and Hongjun? When that happens, should we rather die than betray him, or should we submit to him? Or should we stay in Chao's camp and stay in Chao's camp? Or should we be spies on both sides? For a moment, thousands of thoughts ran through Hao Yin and Yu Yang's minds. However, they had to admit that they were thinking too much. Not to mention that Fang Qingshan wasn't that kind of person. Even if he wanted to use them to deal with Hongjun, how important were they to Hongjun? They were just pawns that could be discarded at will. Not to mention these, Hao Yin was indeed a model of enduring hardships. Although the scene was very abrupt, he quickly calmed down. Although he was anxious and fearful, he did not show it on his face. Instead, he bowed to Fang Qingshan respectfully as if he was facing Hongjun. No one would blame him for being too polite. Greetings, Supreme Master Blood Sea. May I know why you summoned us here? A wise man submits to circumstances. Fang Qingshan was a mixed essence cultivator and not a sage, so he couldn't address him as a sage, let alone by his name. Therefore, he called him Supreme Master. Seeing Hao Yin's behavior, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but secretly nod. Hao Yin was indeed extraordinary. It was no wonder that Hongjun could push out a celestial emperor. Although he was just a puppet, not everyone could survive in the cracks between the sages. If he was useless, it would be useless even if he had Hongjun as his backer. After all, a backer was just a deterrent, especially when he had the same backer as the sages. Although he was biased, it was obvious that he couldn't use this backer at will. Needless to say, although the celestial emperor was important, the sages were equally important. One was to manage the desolation of all living beings, and the other was to replace the heavens. However, if only one of them could survive and he had to choose between the two, Hongjun would definitely choose the saint without hesitation. This was because Sun Wukong knew that the celestial emperor would take turns. Come to my house tomorrow. Moreover, Hao Yin wasn't the first celestial emperor. Before him, there was Dijun, who was more powerful. Since he was a latecomer and those who were more powerful than him were finished, someone could naturally replace him, even if they were not as powerful. However, it was completely different for the sages. Once a sage died, it would be a huge blow to Hongjun Tiandao. During the first Great Sorcerer and Demon War, Niuhua and Hongjuan sages died one after another, which almost caused Hongjun Tiandao to collapse. In the end, it was only after Hongjuan's many schemes the birth of the sages, the integration of the outland, the birth of the human path, and the birth of the earth path that it finally recovered. Therefore, only by becoming a sage could one become a true chess player and manipulator. Others could only be pawns, including the celestial emperor. After saying so much, he just wanted to express one point. If Jun displayed the domineering and bold vision of an emperor, then Hao Yin displayed the forbearance of an emperor to the fullest. It's nothing much. I just feel that the Hao Yin mirror in your hand is faded with me. Although Fang Qingshan was full of admiration, he didn't show it on his face. He went straight to the point. He didn't have a time to talk nonsense with Hao Yin. Moreover, he didn't have to do this to deal with Hao Yin. After all, he had an absolute advantage and suppression over Hao Yin. Most importantly, he moved Hao Yin from the heavenly court. Although he concealed the secrets of heaven, he couldn't hide it from Hong Jun for long. Chapter 11:10. After all, Hao Yin was the emperor of heaven, the nominal ruler of untainted land. He ruled the 3 realms and 6 paths, the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and all living beings. He had a high position and extraordinary significance. If he disappeared for too long, Hong Jun would definitely be attracted, and that would be troublesome. Especially when the person who took Hao Yin away was Fang Qingshan, Hong Jun would definitely not let it go. Although Fang Qingshan was not afraid of trouble, it was better to avoid trouble. For him, cultivation, divine sense, spiritual treasure, and improving his strength were the most important. As for other trifles, karma, and troubles, he would try to avoid them as much as possible. Of course, it did not matter if he could not avoid them, because he would not cause trouble, but he was not afraid of trouble. Since this treasure is destined to be with the Supreme, Hao Yin is willing to give it to the sage. Hearing Fang Qingshan's words, Hao Yin's face froze. He did not expect Fang Qingshan, as a sage of primordial chaos, to be so shameless. Hao Yin had just got his hands on a magic treasure that had not been warmed up yet, but Fang Qingshan was already eyeing it. Hao Yin's cultivation had not reached the peak of sage-to-be. Although the Hao Yin mirror was good, it was only a top-notch primordial spiritual treasure. But Fang Qingshan was not only a sage of primordial chaos, but also more powerful than many sages. He even had many primordial treasures. Hao Yin did not know why he was eyeing his Hao Yin mirror. Could it be that there are other mysteries that I don't know about? Hao Yin could not help but speculate. However, if he got along with Zhuani, he would not have such a feeling. Sages and primordial chaos were also human beings with 7 emotions and 6 desires. The most important thing was that the world was bustling for benefits. As long as there were benefits, there would be motivation. It was just a matter of how well they controlled it and who they behaved in front of. For the sake of benefits, Zhuani had even personally dealt with the 10 golden crows. Although he had a backer, distant water could not quench present thirst. Hao Yin, who did not want to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, made the most favorable decision for himself in the shortest time possible. He intended to directly give this treasure to Fang Qingshan. Good. He's a man who does great things. Fang Qingshan nodded with satisfaction. It was not because Hao Yin was sensible, but because he knew how to make choices and be willing to give up. Only by giving up can you gain. Because no matter how hard he struggled, he could not avoid losing the clear sky mirror in the end. Instead of losing the treasure and suffering himself, it was better to take a step back and enjoy the boundless sea and sky. Although you're sincere, I can't take advantage of you. I'll give you a spirit treasure of equivalent value in exchange. As he spoke, Fang Qingshan waved his hand to take the Hao Yin mirror from Hao Yin's hand, and then he took out a similar top-notch primordial spiritual treasure and handed it to Hao Yin. Back then, when they were dividing up the treasures in the Purple Cloud Palace, Fang Qingshan had plundered most of the top spiritual treasures on the Treasure Division Cliff. Therefore, he did not lack the magic treasures to exchange for the Supreme Sky Mirror. Thank you, Supremacy. Hao Yin did not expect that there would be such a pleasant surprise. He was already prepared to suffer a huge loss. Even so, Hao Ian did not have a good impression of Fang Qingshan. After all, anyone who was hit with a stick like this would not have a good impression of him, even if he was given a carrot. Especially when he guessed that the Supreme Sky Mirror had a huge secret. Otherwise, why would someone like Fang Qingshan speak without thinking? All right, as the Celestial Emperor, you must be busy right now. I won't keep you any longer. Go back. After getting what he wanted, Fang Qingshan naturally lost interest in talking to Hao Yin. Moreover, Fang Qingshan realized that the secrets he had hidden from heaven were about to be broken. Therefore, he waved his hand and sent Hao Yin and Hao Yin back. At the same time, the secrets that Fang Qingshan had previously hidden were instantly revealed. But it was too late. Everyone did not know why Fang Qingshan valued the Supreme Sky Mirror in Hao Yin's hands. It was merely a top-notch, primordial spiritual treasure. Although they guessed the same as Hao Yin that there might be a big secret, it was completely useless and could only be a topic of conversation. After all, it was not like they could take it from him. After all, even the Bell of Chaos had entered and exited his hands. Moreover, he did not take it by force. He obtained it through an exchange. Fang Qingshan did not care about what others thought. At this moment, the Supreme Sky Mirror was in his hands. Then, the Kunlun Mirror and the Reincarnation Mirror should also be in his hands. Otherwise, if Hong Jun and the others calculated and interfered, it would be very disadvantageous for him. Therefore, after sending Hao Yin out of the Blood Sea, Fang Qingshan left the Blood Sea quietly and headed for Kunlun Mountain. Kunlun Mountain was divided into east and west. East Kunlun was where the Jade Mirage Palace was located. Sanqing lived there, and it was the ancestral court of Taoism. West Kunlun was the residence of the Queen Mother of the West. Legend had it that the Queen Mother of the West had the head of a human and the body of a leopard. She was served by 2 green birds. She was a Taoist deity and was different from the Duke of the East. However, unlike the Duke of the East, who was determined to advance and collapse, the Queen Mother of the West was very low-key. Although she was the leader of the female deities, she had never carried out her duties. She lived in West Kunlun all year round and did not go out. She was a proper homebody. The most famous thing was that she was named the leader of the female deities and the grass of immortality in West Kunlun. Kunlun Mountain was indeed the location of the ancestral vein of the untainted land. The 36 paradises, the 72 blessed lands, the 5 Manor Temple, the Fire Cloud Cave, and even Mount Meru, Mount Phoenix's Perch, and Mount Yujing, which were also Sage Dojo, could not be compared to it. Even compared to the 33 heavens and the heavenly court, the Jade Palace was not inferior. Although West Kunlun was slightly inferior to East Kunlun, compared to Shumi Mountain and Phoenix Mountain, they were not inferior. However, in this place, spiritual energy was like rain, clouds were bright and dim, smoke billowed. There were strange flowers that did not wither in all seasons. There were evergreen pines and cypresses, and there were heavenly materials and earthly treasures everywhere. It was not inferior to the 3 immortal islands overseas. Occasionally, there were groups of cranes, monkeys, and elks playing together. It was harmonious and natural. Even Guanyin Bodhisattva of Mount Putua's purple bamboo forest had to convert a black bear monster to protect it. West Kunlun was an important place, so there was no lack of protectors. The classic of mountains and seas. West Mountain Classic said, 400 li southwest is called the Hill of Kunlun. It is the capital of the Emperor, the land of God Lu Wu. His divine form is a tiger's body with 9 tails, a human's face with tiger's claws. He is also a god, the 9 divisions of the heavens, and the Emperor's cage. Lu Wu's cultivation was so high that he was no weaker than the 10 demon marshals of the demon race. Other than that, it was impossible for West Kunlun to only have the Queen Mother of the West. As the leader of the female deities, personally named by the ancient Daozu, although Queen Mother of the West was self-aware, did not want to be affected by karma, and did not take the initiative to act as the leader of the female deities, there were still many people who sought refuge with her, especially the female deities. After all, compared to male deities, the lives of female deities were more difficult. As long as there was no major mistake, sincerity, and people who could cultivate peacefully, Queen Mother of the West would not reject anyone. Therefore, although West Kunlun was not noisy, it was still very lively. Chapter 11:11. Those who could enter West Kunlun were all people who focused on cultivation, or those who did not have too many distracting thoughts and were content with the status quo. Just like those sages of the high antiquity human race that Feng Qingshan had met in the journey to the West world and headed to Dachi heaven to listen to the Tao. Hence, the entire West Kunlun was filled with a sense of peace. It was lively but not noisy. There were many people but not crowded. There were fights but no schemes. There were obsessions but no demons. However, at a certain moment, a ripple flashed in the air. Other than the Queen Mother of the West, all the living creatures, even time and space, seemed to be frozen. There was not a single sound at all. However, this was only West Kunlun, the territory of the Queen Mother of the West. Outside, even if there was a thin line separating them, they would not be able to see the slightest clue. Even if a sage approached, if they were not paying attention, they would subconsciously overlook it. The Queen Mother of the West, who was originally immersed in the great Tao, suddenly felt that something was wrong. Everything around her seemed too quiet. Although she was cultivating, she was not in seclusion. She still left a strand of her primordial spirit outside. Sensing such a change, she hurriedly opened her eyes and scanned the surroundings with her primordial spirit. Instantly, she was shocked. Firstly, the entire West Kunlun seemed to have been frozen by someone. Other than her, everyone else was actually silently affected without any resistance. Secondly, the Queen Mother of the West realized that although she was not affected, it was obvious that the other party had been lenient. This was because if she wanted to extend her primordial spirit outside of West Kunlun, it was clearly not something that she could do. Facing such a situation, the Queen Mother of the West was naturally shocked, afraid, and angry. She was shocked that someone had actually silently controlled the entire West Kunlun. She was naturally afraid that if this person wanted to deal with her, it would be as easy as flipping his palm. Her anger was self-evident. Anyone who encountered such a situation would be angry. I wonder which sage has come to visit West Kunlun. This little girl is extremely honored. Sage, please show yourself so that I can do my part as a host. The Queen Mother of the West quickly regained her senses and calmed herself down. It was a noble and dignified voice that was filled with the charm of silver bells and flowing water. She knew that she had to remain calm in the face of a major event, because panic, anger, and other emotions would not only be of no help, but would instead add to the chaos. More importantly, with her cultivation, means, and identity as the host, she had fallen into the trap unknowingly. In the entire Desolation sect, apart from the Saint of Primordial Chaos, she couldn't think of anyone else who had such ability. Since he was a Primordial Chaos sage, there was no need to go through so much trouble if he wanted to deal with her. Besides, it was useless to resist. Since that was the case, the Queen Mother of the West quickly adjusted her state of mind. The Queen Mother of the West is indeed the leader of the female deities. An emotional sigh came from Adair. A wave-like air current surged and passed through the entire West Kunlun, seeping into every corner. However, not a single bit of it leaked outside. Sanqing and the rest, who were very close, didn't notice anything strange about West Kunlun at all. It seemed to be no different from before, and they even subconsciously ignored the existence of West Kunlun. It had to be said that after this seclusion and digesting the treasures obtained from the Wu people's secret vault, Feng Qingshan's cultivation had not only improved, but his understanding of Tao had also increased day by day. In particular, his 5 elements reincarnation cycle was already on the right track. Although it couldn't be compared to Hongjun, which had already returned to its original state, it had already reached the peak. His moves were like the horns of an antelope, leaving no traces. Following that, a silhouette appeared in the void, materializing from nothingness and materializing from nothingness. Ripples appeared in the air, pulling the two sides apart like curtains. So, with Supremacy Blood Sea, I've been rude. After seeing that the person was Fong Qing, the Queen Mother of the West's pupils immediately constricted to the size of a needle. She didn't have much interaction with Fong Qing. Their status and cultivation were not on the same level. She didn't know why Fong Qing had come at this moment. The most important thing was that he had come quietly. The entire West Kunlun was under his domineering control. The Queen Mother of the West believed that even if she wanted to send a voice transmission now, she probably wouldn't be able to do it. Moreover, Fong Qing had just concealed the heavenly secrets and captured Hao Yin, the newly appointed Jade Emperor, to exchange for the Hao Yin mirror. Then, he came to West Kunlun. Could it be for the Kunlun mirror? After connecting the dots, the Queen Mother of the West had a vague guess in her heart. It was precisely because of this guess that the Queen Mother of the West and Hao Yin felt the same way. Moreover, they were even more reluctant and difficult to choose. After all, Hao Yin's Hao Yin mirror had just been obtained and hadn't warmed up yet. On the other hand, the Queen Mother of the West Kunlun mirror was her most precious treasure. It was even more important than the water purification bowl that Hong Jun had given her. This time, I took the liberty to visit the Taoist to exchange for the Kunlun mirror in my hands with the Taoist. Sure enough, Fong Qingshan's words confirmed the Queen Mother of the West's guess. However, she couldn't feel happy at all. At the same time, a deep sense of helplessness hit her heart. Sorrowful. This was the sorrow of the weak. Without strength, one could only be trampled on by others. Fong Qingshan was still considered good. Although he was also very domineering, at least he didn't let others suffer losses. If he encountered people of the devil's path, such as Ro, he was afraid that, not to mention giving you a similar compensation, a bone casually thrown to you would probably be a great reward. What's more, without any compensation, he would even kill you. It's my honor that the supreme martial artist has taken a fancy to the Kunlun mirror. The weak couldn't contend with the strong. Although she felt uncomfortable, the Queen Mother of the West and Hao Yin didn't show it on their faces. This was because she knew that Fong Qingshan was different from the other sages. The other sages and primordial immortals might not make things too difficult for her for the sake of Hong Jun. At most, they would suppress her. After all, she was the leader of the female deities that was personally appointed by the Daozu. However, Fong Qingshan was someone who would start a war with the Daozu at the slightest disagreement. If she was stubborn, it was very likely that she would be killed. Didn't you see that even Hao Yin was very sensible to make a deal? Therefore, the Queen Mother of the West took out the Kunlun mirror and handed it to Fong Qingshan. Okay, thank you very much, Taoist. Fong Qingshan was very satisfied with the Queen Mother of the West's tactfulness. I won't take Taoist things for free. This treasure has a special relationship with the Taoist. Just take it as returning it to its rightful owner. I believe that the Taoist will not feel that this deal is a loss. As he spoke, Fong Qingshan took out a scroll and handed it to the Queen Mother of the West. Seeing this treasure, the Queen Mother of the West was shocked. This was because this treasure was the treasure that Mosquito Dowrin had been searching for on the Three Deities Island in the Four Seas for the pure white lotus. Coincidentally, the Demon Clan was attacking Penglai Island. In the end, he took it away and snatched the heavenly opportunity. This treasure originally belonged to the Duke of the East. The treasure of Penglai Island, the innumerable immortals array. Although this treasure was not as good as the three ultimate arrays of the desolation, it was still one of the best. With it, the Queen Mother of the West and the strength of West Kunlun could be organically integrated and greatly increased. Chapter 11-12. Of course, the formation of innumerable immortals was different from other formations in that it could also suppress fate. And the effect was not bad. Otherwise, why would sect leader Tong Tian use this treasure to suppress fate in the original trajectory? Because he did not have a supreme treasure to do so. However, it was not one of the three ultimate formations of desolation, nor was it a primordial supreme treasure. In terms of effect, it was much weaker than the Pangu banner, the Tai Chi diagram, or the Zhoutian star formation. At most, it was comparable to the golden lotus of virtue in the West. Therefore, it could not completely suppress the fate of the tribe of severity. However, it was enough for a sect that was not a saint, especially the Queen Mother of the West, who was not a troublemaker or ambitious person. With this treasure, as long as she did not court death, it would be more than enough to defend herself. In addition, this treasure was indeed fated with the Queen Mother of the West. After all, the Duke of the East and the Queen Mother of the West were both male immortals and female immortals. They could be seen as people in the same boat, just like Sanqing, who had received Junyi, Niwa Fushi, Dijun Tai, and Hao Yi and Jasper Pool. That was why Fang Qingshan said that it was returned to its rightful owner. Of course, the reason why Fang Qingshan was willing to hand over the formation of innumerable immortals was that this treasure was not that useful to him. Moreover, he had already completely cracked the formation. In the future, as long as he wanted, he could use some natural treasures to refine another one. Alas, how terrifying! Looking at the direction in which Fang Qingshan disappeared, the Queen Mother of the West secretly sighed in relief. Then, looking at Lu Wu and the others who had woken up and seemed to be unaware of anything, she shook her head and sighed. Fortunately, the Queen Mother of the West was a very self-aware person. In the ancient times, she did not blindly get involved with the Duke of the East. Now, although Fang Qingshan had taken away the Kunlun mirror, she had obtained the formation of innumerable immortals, so it was not a loss. As for Fang Qingshan, she did not have any desire to take revenge. However, in order to avoid other changes, or perhaps because she could not wait to refine the formation of innumerable immortals, the Queen Mother of the West directly sealed off the entire West Kunlun after Fang Qingshan left. After leaving West Kunlun, Fang Qingshan did not return to the Blood Sea. Now that Haotian Mirror and Kunlun Mirror were in his hands, the next step was naturally to find Reincarnation Mirror. However, compared to the Supreme Sky Mirror, the Reincarnation Mirror had a clear destination. Although Fang Qingshan guessed that the Reincarnation Mirror should be in Mount Jihua, the future dojo of the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva. However, even though he knew its name, it wasn't easy to find it in desolation. After all, it wasn't time for Mount Jihua to emerge yet. With the Khanate Grand Formation concealing it, ordinary people probably wouldn't be able to discover it. Of course, this was referring to ordinary people. Fang Qingshan was obviously not one of them. He already possessed the primordial cardinal treasure mirror, the flesh and blood of the reincarnation demon god, the laws, the supreme sky mirror, and the Kunlun mirror. In terms of karma, he had far surpassed Ksitagarbha. Since that was the case, Fang Qingshan decided to use the method of divination to deduce the origin of matter. 50 great Daos, 49 heavenly divination. Leave a chance of survival. Fall. Fang Qingshan took out a copper coin with a pair of wings on its back and a round sky and square earth. Then, he used the aura of the reincarnation demon god, the Kunlun mirror, and the Haotian mirror as evidence and performed the karma deduction technique. He tossed the treasure fall coin in his hand. Although it wasn't as good as Dijun's book of the Luo River diagram, it wasn't too far off. Especially after the advancement of the timeless arc, the treasure fall coin's grade had risen. In terms of grade, it wasn't any lower than the book of the Luo River diagram. Suddenly, there seemed to be a force guiding the treasure fall coin in a certain direction. Seeing the treasure fall coin turn into a streak of golden light and fly away, Fang Qingshan was overjoyed. He quickly controlled the treasure fall coin's speed and followed it. He knew that he wouldn't return empty-handed if there were no accidents. After the earth-shattering Great Sorcerer and Demon War, many blessed lands had turned into nothingness. He didn't know if it was to fill in the gaps, or if it was time for the blessed lands to come out, or if it was because of the impact of the war that flaws appeared in the formation. Many blessed lands that had been formed long ago and were extremely hidden from the senses of the great mediums revealed their true faces or covered half of their faces. As long as it was fated, the chances of finding them would increase greatly. What Fang Qingshan didn't know was that when he deduced the possible location of the reincarnation mirror in Mount Jiuhua, a young monk also walked down from Mount Meru and headed towards the same destination as him. This person was naturally Ksitigarbha. After the great sorcerer and demon war, many people who had gone into seclusion to avoid the tribulation came out and traveled to the desolation world. Ksitigarbha was no exception. He even sensed that something seemed to be calling him impatiently. Hence, he walked out following the feeling. Fang Qingshan naturally didn't know about this. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. Because even if Ksitigarbha got the reincarnation mirror one step ahead of him, so what? At most, it would be the same as trading the Kunlun mirror and the Haotian mirror. He would just pay an extra top, primordial spiritual treasure. As long as this treasure didn't fall into the hands of Hongjun Tiandao, not to mention Ksitigarbha, even the two people who received Zhuani would not become enemies with him for such a thing. After all, Fang Qingshan could be said to be a taboo existence in the desolation world. Today's desolation world was much smaller than before the great sorcerer and demon war. After all, not only was the sky broken, Mount Buzhou collapsed, and the earth was also shattered. Hongjun Tiandao refined the largest 4 fragments into 4 major continents, namely the Dongxing state, the Zaihinia state, the Nantian state, and the Beilu state. With Fang Qingshan's speed, it would only take him 15 minutes to travel from West Kunlun to Mount Jiuhua if he used all his strength. However, in that case, the commotion would be too big. Even so, it didn't take much time. It was obviously not the time for Mount Jiuhua to come out. There was still a connate formation outside to protect it. At the same time, it concealed the heavenly secrets. However, this formation was obviously not a problem for Fang Qingshan. After all, he was considered a fated person. Even if he tried to break the formation by force, it would be just a piece of cake for him. Although this formation was mysterious, it was obviously much weaker than the protective formation of 3 Immortal Island. Therefore, Fang Qingshan passed through the formation and entered Mount Jiuhua almost effortlessly. In the past, he looked at Mount Jiuhua from Zhejiang. The heavenly river hung green water, showing 9 lotus flowers. Mount Jiuhua was indeed worthy of being one of the 4 famous mountains of Buddhism in the future. It was really a beautiful place. It overlooked the Yangtze River in the north, the Yellow Mountain in the south, Taiping Lake in the east, and Xiyang in the west. It stretched for more than 1,000,000 kilometers. There were more than 100 mountains of various sizes, and the Ten Kings Peak was the largest. During this period, it could not be said that the spiritual energy was like rain, but it was close. Although it could not be compared to the 3 Immortal Islands or West Kunlun, it was not inferior to the Wui Mountain Grotto heaven that Fang Qingshan had obtained in the great world of the gods. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.